Welcome back to Summoning Insight. Play-ins are happening, and we do support that fiesta here at Summoning Insight. Unlike the Riot pick'ems, we're actually back. I know it's been a long time, guys. We'll be going a lot during Worlds, though. You could expect a lot of shows. We'll be doing stuff. Probably have a mega preview episode of the main event after we do the play-ins. So we'll talk about that after the play-ins are over. And then we'll probably do an episode in between the first round robin and second round robin of groups. And then we'll be doing shows after every stage of the playoffs. So we got a lot of stuff coming up.
You obviously just alluded to that as a joke to the refs. I think we should actually talk about that. Because here's the thing.
Sure.
I'm so sick and tired of the amount of fucking rope the community gives to fucking Riot. Like, I don't get it. How can everything be a mistake? Like, no human would ever be, no one single person would ever be allowed to fuck up this many times. But every time, dude, people actually believed it was a mistake when the TSM guy did the suicide meme. You know, it's a complete. So for this one, right, we were literally told, like, that was just like placeholder tech, and then we just put it live accidentally. So basically, you just don't have the most bare bones competence, or you just, here's what I really think, Monty, it's obvious. In the modern day, that is the tone that social media managers do to be down with their kids, right? They think that's like being edgy and funny, right? And I guarantee you, Riot, like you've seen it on the broadcast, sometimes they try to go and lean a tiny bit into that, you know, just put their foot in the pool. And so I think what happened with that is, like a lot of jokes, sometimes a joke in your head's brilliant, but it just doesn't land, or people take it the wrong way, right? That can happen, of course. And here's the problem. I even made this point on Twitter. I have no problem with the joke at all, by the way. I would make a joke like that, of course. The problem really is you can't be Riot and do that, because that's like being like a fucking Amish preacher and then being like, okay, so what I was fucking getting down on the weekend, fucking bitches and smoking, like, well, you're the one that can't do that, isn't it, you idiot? Like, yeah, that might be okay for a normal guy, not for you. You know, that's my only problem. I didn't have any problem really at all, by the way. They don't think it's a fiesta. It is, except that you get like an LCK and a fucking LPL team in there. You know, that's the only angle on that I would say is wrong. It says me fiesta, though, of course.
You know, How On Life could arguably be called a fiesta as well. So, you know,
compared to those teams, it'll be all right, though.
You know, I think what's funny about this, Thorin, is like people are like, oh yeah, it was just a mistake. Like, even if you believe, so let's just say we believe there was a mistake, that was a placeholder copy. Nobody's actually discussing the fact that these are the jokes that are being made internally at Riot. So all you're looking at is like the mask is like slipping, guys, and you can see that there's a huge difference between what they're willing to put out publicly and the way they perceive things behind the scenes. Which is
they essentially just said, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Yeah, exactly. Because if you remember, this has happened before. Does no one remember one of our favorite ones of all time? Because again, reality, just to prove that essentially we do exist in Maya, like a, you know, veil of illusion that cannot actually be reality. Because reality's script writing is too shit. Like, there's not enough depth. Put it this way, one James Joyce novel is better than actually reality. It has more depth and like interesting things than actual reality, right? And here's how I'm going to prove it to you. You know, obviously, eventually, they actually did do that fucking partnership where Louis Vuitton made like fucking the trophy or whatever, or like some custom
trophy case.
That's too close to being on the nose. Bear in mind, it was only like 2 years earlier that Sanjuro guy was like, let's hope Tyler Wunsch gets cancer and then we Gucci. It's like, I can't even take that. And then also, as I say, that's when the mask slipped me, because that's just like, that's their humor internally, because like everyone, they're just a bunch of fucking idiot gamers, aren't they? Of course they weren't really sat around like a church, like of course people were making ridiculous jokes. I guarantee they've made some insane jokes about Monty originally was behind the scenes. Of course they have. Of course.
Of course.
I mean, I bet the day that they banned you, they were fucking high-fiving, fucking
100%.
beer pong, everything. Of course, it's a party, wasn't it? You know?
I think also what's funny about this is, like, for me, if this is what people at Riot believe, that the play-ins are a fiesta, right? If this is what they really believe behind the scenes, then why can't we just fix the format and do it properly? Please, Riot, if you also acknowledge that it's a fiesta, please fix it. Please fix the world's format. Just do it already.
Because here's the problem I really do have with the world's format. It's actually like a serious point at this point. Is, listen, I already wasn't a huge fan of like the play-ins part anyway and stuff. Like, for example, even before they put the LPL and the LCK teams into play-ins, it already was like mildly insulting to me that when a team came third in a region, like famously, if you remember, like Origin was third, right? Obviously with like SOAS expect, they came third in EU, and then the Riot system treats them like, well, tell you what, you know, fucking, I don't know, like Vietnamese team, So you can't be in the main event. Like, what even was that? And then now I find it egregious, Monty. Because, I already hate the fact that we'll never actually know in League of Legends who the best teams are. Because if you know anything about parity, like if you watch like TI or you watch like the CSGO Major, there'll be a time where like the 7th team from the best region wins. Like that can happen. That's real. That can never happen in League of Legends. It's impossible. So as a result, not only do I find it personally insulting that you basically let like some shit cunts from fucking Australia go to the tournament and go like, I'm at Worlds. And then basically like Knight sat at home in China going, guess I'm just not good enough, am I? Like, yeah, got to step my shit up or move to Australia, apparently. And then this year and last year is the most egregious of all. Because what they do now is go, now LPL and LCK, you've got to fight through the wild card. Like, what are you talking about? This has gone too far now. Like, I can't handle this. This can't be the way we do things, boys. Team Liquid cannot be in the main event. Like, just, well, tell you what, LNG and Tarzan, if you really play well, you could earn a spot to play against me. What is this? Like, they've made their event stupid, mate. I know they're never gonna turn the steamboat around. They're never gonna like, fully course correct that. We're gonna be trapped in this forever. But here's my problem, and it sounds like a harsh, like extreme one, but just think about this. We're no spring chickens, Monty. This will be like our 8th Worlds, 9th actually, that we'll watch, right? Because obviously there only been 9. But it'll be our 9th Worlds. So what Riot did was, by living in a utopian Star Trek Next Generation fantasy where every region can have like equal resources and be equally good and everyone is so great they could produce it. By doing that, they've just sacrificed like a decade almost of amazing tournaments, and they're going to do it for another decade if it keeps running. So at the end of League, you'll really think, I kind of said this in an interview that someone transcribed, you'll kind of think at the end of League, like, what was this compared to the other big games? What was this compared to like TI or something? You kind of will.
It's really terrible, isn't it?
Sad, isn't
it? So many years, like we haven't even had like the best teams in the world, and like I would be fine with. Look, if play-ins served, honestly, here's the weird part. Play-ins need to be more robust. We need more play-ins. Like we need to get like the 5th and 6th best teams out of China and Korea into these play-ins and have them
could even do it
spot in the main event.
Yes, you've just nailed it there. There's the thing, Monty. You don't even have to go as harsh as I was. Like obviously, I don't give a fuck. So I would just invite like 6 teams from each region and then go like NA can have 1 and then EU. But if you want to actually make it so that like it's like they're there but they're not guaranteed to go in. What you just said is essentially what they used to do at TI. They had a wild card qualifier, but it was like the team that was just below qualifying from the major regions all played in a thing and 2 of them got to go in. So you could do a similar thing. You could take like the other 3 teams from LCK and other I mean listen, LCK's not great now, but obviously we hope in the future it'll be very good. You could just take them, have them all play for it, even if it's for 1 spot, because then the team that wins that, by the way, might actually win Worlds. It could really happen. Obviously if they can win that qualifier, they probably could, right? That'd be cool. I think that's a good compromise.
Yeah, I think like you need even more seeds in a way, which is, I know it's kind of weird to say, but like I don't think that certain, I don't even think that you should be guaranteed, like if you're the 3rd best team out of NA, like I don't think you should necessarily, or 2nd best team out of NA, I don't think you should necessarily be guaranteed a spot in the main event. Like I think if you cut NA's seeds down to 1 that's guaranteed into the main event, and then you put all the rest of the seeds into a competition with like the 5th and 6th best teams from Korea and China. To me, it's like, if you can't beat those teams for a slot, why do I want to watch you in the biggest tournament of the year? Like, and in a way too, I would rather have there be fewer teams in the main event so that we could have double elimination or something like that, which would make it a much more exciting or compelling experience.
Oh, I agree.
All right, we are going to have Nymaera and Sheepy on today to talk about some of the minor regions that are competing in play-ins. But before we do that, I mean, there's tons of stuff that we could go over, Thorin. Like we didn't do anything about the group draws. We haven't talked about all this Rekkles drama.
Am I the only one, by the way, who feels like the group draw has just had its balls ripped off completely? Because first of all, especially now there's 4 LCK and 4 LPL potentially, right? First of all, it means that because Riot still does that thing where you cannot have more than 1 team from a region in a group, there is no hype to the group draw. There's almost none.
Almost scripted.
Even if, and because of their bad pool system, basically if you go and look, there actually aren't really many different groups you could get. Like, I've tried doing it a bunch of times myself. I've had to see it. It's almost basically always going to be like this. There'll be one like slightly strong group with a couple of favorites and one with like a bunch of middles. You get the one that's the end, which is the one that Fnatic's in, which is kind of like that famous one where like it was all the teams that wouldn't win Worlds when TSM went. It was like TSM, WE, Flash. You get a team like that with like a lot of parity. You get the same type of groups every time. And then the worst thing is, because of the nationality thing, and it's so likely that the Korean and the Chinese team get through, it means, again, you just know what group everyone everyone's in. Like, there is no fucking drama. There's not even an element, which is what they meant for the planes, of like, that really decides like where you're going and what group. It doesn't, because of the nationality element. That actually just rips it out of it, mate, which is so silly in itself, by the way, because what's the point in having like the fucking bracket stage part, etc., of the planes when like I could come second, but then this team can't go in that group anyway, and I go to a, like, you know, the better group. That's a real thing of that. So I feel like that used to be, listen, I wasn't a fan of it, but I know, like, in, for example, the World Cup in soccer, dude, that's a massive thing, that group draw, because it's just randomized. So when that happens, you're like, holy fuck, it's like incredibly exciting. People were acting like, oh my God, Jankos has pulled this. It's like, you know, there's only like 2 things he could have pulled there. Like, this is, what is the excitement for this? It's like we're still pretending it was 5 years ago or something, you know.
It's because people don't know. People don't know the system, so they just think it's random. So the
problem is, ever since the legendary Reginald and Loco thing, I've just known that it has to be a certain way, because as they learned the hard way.
Yeah.
Still one of the greatest videos of all time, isn't it? I think my favourite part of it is that Loco takes the hit first, because Reginald's just actually so stupid, he still doesn't know what's happening, and he's just going. And then Loco has to like go like, do like sign language or something like this. I don't know what he fucking does. Like, because Reginald still didn't get. Cause you remember when they're going like, yeah, they're like high fiving, and then it's like they could. It turned out the best part is if they'd actually understood the system before they were even drawn, they were in the bad group. They actually didn't. That's the best part.
Yeah.
They had to always be in that. So they, the whole time they thought it's like they hit the fate. It was complete fake hope. It never actually existed. Much like TSM at Worlds in many ways, you know.
I just like when they're like jumping around, hugging each other at first, too, and the Loco's just like pointing at each other. It is an incredible video. Oh. It is an incredible video.
Because you just couldn't create. You couldn't even fake that, mate. No one would be able to act that out. It's amazing, I know.
We know Loco can't act at all, so
that's why I always thought the genius that we had is, because people don't get this. Look, it's about how you use your actors. So we had Loco play like the role of just like a random woman in like a film noir. But if you know how bad the actors that aren't the main stars of those, that is how they talk. They just come up and read their lines like, "But Monty, what is happening here?" Like, so actually, we made Loco like perfect casting. We made it actually fit, didn't we? Like, it's the only thing he could have done, basically.
All right, you want to talk about the Rekkles drama that's going on, because the rumors are now swirling that Rekkles is out of G2.
By rumors, you mean people just say the same thing I said like what, a month ago or something? Am I missing something? Oh, breaking news! What Thorin said a month ago, it's right.
But you weren't right then, and the rumor accounts are right now, Thorin.
I'm never right, apparently. I mean, I've got 100% success rate, you know, on the things I have reported, but never right, am I? Just always wrong. I must just listen. You have to understand, facts.
You're so lucky.
If I'm not right, I actually am like prescient. I can see the future, so you can pick which. I'm willing to go either way. That one, you know.
Either you just are a fourth dimensional being who's just reading the future, or you know, your rumors and reports and your sources happen to be right. What a shocking coincidence. All right. So let's talk about this, because the latest rumors are like, who wants Rekkles out of the team?
Exactly.
Now, remember, Rekkles is the reigning LEC MVP. So
from spring he was.
From spring, yeah.
Yes.
So like if he was coming in this year with such a strong performance, and I think most people, I would agree, he did have an individually strong performance in G2.
Even in summer, he had the most kills and the least deaths.
So
of anyone in the league.
Rekkles fans, I need you to understand something. If this is true, and we all agree that Rekkles is a good player, then you must admit, by his teammates wanting him out of G2, that there must be something wrong with him as a teammate. You have to admit this to yourselves right now. Okay?
They don't get as well.
Admitting it to yourself?
Think about it, right? It's not even just as simple as they make. Like, well, it's just gameplay related. Well, first of all, by the way, if it's just gameplay related, you're either admitting what this ginger guy told you also about half a decade ago, that this player is just like incredibly set in his ways and cannot adapt to his teammates, which you all tell me is the main quality of a player. It isn't, by the way. The real secret of League of Legends is you build around the stars. You don't take caps and go, in this team, you're going to adapt and just be an Orianna Ori main. No, you wouldn't use caps that way, would you? So anyway, if people don't know, the joke is you just saw publicly what was wrong with people like Forgiven in their teams. You didn't see the private part, what was wrong with people like Rekkles. So first of all, it's kind of a nonsense angle anyway. But I'd also say this. It isn't just because of his play, you idiots. If it was just because of his play, by the way, it could be fixed. He could adapt his play. The reason he can't is he's I wouldn't say difficult in this. I would just say like he's got a very specific way of communicating. He needs to. By the way, it's an interesting detail I can actually relate to you. That isn't even necessarily a diss to Rekkles. In CS:GO, by the way, the greatest teams in CS:GO that were from Sweden, NIP and Fnatic. One of the reasons why they almost shared no players in their history in terms of the big names, Monty. Like Olafmeister never went and played with Get Right Forest. Like every other region, right? Eventually you mix it up. You know, you have like so many roster shares like the French teams.
Point. I never thought about it.
Here's why. Because in Sweden, right, because actually they tend to be conflict averse. Like, for example, famously, even in CSGO, they don't come to you and go, listen, mate, nothing personal, but we have to kick you from the team. You just come in one day and you're just like not in the fucking team speak or whatever. And then the manager guy just goes, yeah, I need to talk to you about something. And then he just tells you you're fired. And you're like, those are my brothers for like 3 years. Yeah. So here's the thing, right? In Swedish teams as well, it's all about like a comfortable social vibe. And so some of the greatest teams ever have always stressed having a social fit. It's why also you'll notice they tend to hang on to some of the big names for way too long. They just stay together with like a little core pack, and maybe they change 1 or 2 players, but they never change the pack no matter how bad someone gets, because their whole vibe is like, I don't want it to be like pro soccer, you know, where it's like, right, this guy's from Brazil and this guy's from Poland and this guy's from fucking Russia. Let's just hope they figure it out because they're pros. They want the vibe to be like, I need to be comfortable. I've got to like these guys. I've got to have a similar sense of humor to them so they don't annoy me when we're on the road. And so I actually feel like if you look at Rekkles' career, he's just in vein with what the Swedish players are like, actually. Like, that's actually just their demeanor. Whereas the problem is this, that's very unique for European League of Legends, actually. European League of Legends is, I take a guy from Croatia, a fucking whining guy from France, I take a toxic fuck from Greece, the junglers from Spain, I do just throw them all in there. First of all, they probably can't even communicate the first few days. Then they just flame each other, so it solves all the problems. And then eventually you hope, like, you know, like some Lord of the Flies shit, like a hierarchy just emerges from it. So I feel as though actually in that sense, Rekkles is actually a very unique sort of star in that sense. Like if I was going to be mean, I'd just say he's a bit of a princess, you know. He's a bit like Shocks and CSGO. If you don't know, everything has to be his fucking way. And everyone has to dance to his jig. But you can also just say it as, unlike other players, you can't just drop him in and plug and play. Like you can in terms of he'll play well, but he might not play the way your team needs. So I think you do have to build a whole team around him, which they didn't do in G2, obviously. They just brought him literally to plug and play.
Well, why would you build an entire team around him when you have caps? Like,
yeah, G2's the only team it wasn't justified to do. Any other European team, you would, wouldn't you? Like if I was in Fnatic, by the way, if they'd have re-signed him, I would have just kicked half of him if it was causing problems. You know, it would make sense.
You know, what I think is so interesting about this situation too is that Rekkles by doing this, like as a pro player, when you go into a new team environment, keeping in mind that many of your new teammates have been playing together for a number of years right now. I mean, you've got 4, you know, you're the new guy in this environment. So it's kind of up to you to figure out where you fit in, maybe like lay low for a while, try and get the, you know, understand the vibe that you're walking into, right? Because he made this decision at the last second and left Fnatic high and dry. And the thing about Fnatic is that was his show. He was running that team. He was the poster child of Fnatic, and he chose to throw that away. So in this environment, if you're going to G2, well, you're the new guy. You have to fit in. Sounds like he wasn't fitting in with his teammates. So what the fuck do you do now if you're Rekkles? Like you could have stayed in Fnatic until the end of your career very, very easily. Like he could have fallen off a cliff in terms of skill, and he still would have been there because he was so important to the overall Fnatic brand. Now, do I think Fnatic's going to take him back at this point in time? I wouldn't. If I was them, I'd still be pretty pissed about what happened. I don't think Fnatic needs him. Yeah, Upset's really good, right? Like you don't need him. Yep. Fnatic's doing just fine. They made Worlds. G2 did not. So like, why would you bring Rekkles back? And so what do you do now if you're Rekkles? Like maybe he's got a shot to go to like a team like BDS that has a lot of money because BDS is owned by like the richest guy in Belgium and they're throwing money left and right. They just bought that spot for $28 million. Maybe they want a face of the team, but like, regardless, you're going into...
The rumor was Vitality, like the whole thing of like maybe they're blocking him because everyone, again, they should know by now if they listen to my talk shows. Vitality has money to spend. Like the rumor I heard in the offseason was maybe they had a super team with perks. Like they were willing to spend a lot. So I would imagine they are. By the way, here's what I'll do. One of my skills is I read between the lines and I know things behind the scenes. So here's what I'll just say right now. I suspect personally the fact that all of a sudden out of nowhere, theoretically credible journalists start reporting like Carlos is blocking him moving to Vitality. Well, who do you think that could be coming from? Who would benefit the most from that information getting out there? It's vitality, isn't it? Like, I would not be surprised whatsoever, because I know in CSGO they do that. They have certain connections with journalists who just suspiciously say things at the right time that push and pull certain things. That sounds to me like they... Like maybe the rumor is he won't let them go there, and so what you do is you test it, you stress test it by putting it out there, and then you make Carlos have to say, like he did, I won't stop him going there, whatever, in like an abstract way, So like, there's always some industry fuckery going on in there. In CSGO, we've had a lot of that.
Half the leaks you guys see are oftentimes made by the players or their agents themselves, just like seeing what's possible or trying to apply exterior pressure onto a situation. Like it happens in sports too, like traditional sports. So
it makes sense.
It's just the same bullshit that goes around.
Imagine me and you are two like really good junglers competing for a spot, and at the moment the org hasn't decided, they could go either way. But imagine the rumor comes out that like I'm joining, and maybe actually fans fuck with me. So then all of a sudden all the response like, oh fuck yeah, this would be amazing, yeah, gotta do this. Like that could potentially influence the org. That could be, and by the way, similarly, all of a sudden all the analysts are giving their thoughts. Maybe they're like, wow, it's what an incredible move. I never thought they'd have the balls to go for that move. That, again, people think that like, oh, orgs aren't influenced by that. They're just people, Social like components are like real, That's like social proof in a way. So I think that's totally legit. Here's the thing I thought was most interesting about this story was, first of all, this was basically going to happen. I just had to phrase it as I heard, because that's the nature of it hasn't happened yet, and you have to be careful as a journalist, very careful with your wording, as a certain shithead sheep hasn't figured out yet. So when you do this, right, I actually could have just said, I know Rekkles is getting kicked, but I had to say I heard. So what was great is one of those anonymous leakers, because he didn't A, have that rumour, and B, didn't have any additional information. Well, how was he just going to say, Thorin's right? So what he did was, he like confirmed my report, Monty, but then just put like, but nothing's been decided yet. Well, listen, I'm going to say this right now. It's very rare you can ever say this. My sources are better than yours. I can tell you that on this one. My sources are better. And here's what I love. The new information that's just been brought out by Bloop was that it's Caps and Yankos who are going to sign again. Anyone on my Discord knows I've told you that. And also that they're the ones who sort of don't want to play with Rekkles, right? So all I'm going to say is this, fans, right? Why does Caps fucking hate Rekkles? He's a good ADC. And Yankos, did Rekkles fuck his girlfriend? What an unreasonable set of statements, right? But that's what you guys tell me every time I tell you that I wouldn't want to play with Rekkles, or maybe there's problems with him as a teammate. All I'll say is this, probably the greatest Western player of all time of a jungler just goes, yeah, I don't want to play with Rekkles.
Who's also notoriously like laid back, like Yankos is just chill as fuck. So
there's very few people he wouldn't play with. It's basically forgiving him Rekkles. Oh, isn't that fucking rich? Did I just say it out loud? The list's forgiving him Rekkles. Woo! You guys can decide what number. That's the list of players Yankos doesn't want to play with. And then the other part is Caps already played with him once. So you know what? Caps was like, you know what, Rekkles? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, get the fuck out now. I'll never play with you again. And where's Perks' number? And listen, Yankos, how much are you getting? Like, if we put 4 million together, can we get him again? Can he come? Like, mate, this is mental, isn't it? Like, because what people also don't realise, and I think this is actually a pretty bold statement. I actually think this move's gangster as fuck from G2, by the way. Essentially, what they're saying is, objectively, bearing in mind, you can't get upset. I personally think Hans Sammer sometimes gets a bit overrated, but okay, he was in the mix as well. Rogue's not going to sell him, and quite frankly, he probably wouldn't leave. He's also at Worlds. Basically, unless, like, this isn't happening, you could get, like, Doublelift to come out of retirement and come over. You're just saying, like, I actually dislike Rekkles so much, I'm going to downgrade at the position and think that'll make me a better team. I didn't say it. The actions did, didn't they? Like, logically, who are they getting? Who are they getting? Like,
Maybe they could lure upset over from Fnatic at this point in time. Who knows?
The thing is, though, dude, as mad as it sounds, I actually think this is one of the reasons I wrote that piece at the beginning of the year when I heard that upset was going, where I basically told him, like, don't be like Rekkles. Don't just think, oh, he's got a super team, it's unfair. It's like, no, he does. He has a better set of teammates, but you have good enough teammates. You have teammates where, in theory, if you were like the MVP of the league, you could beat him. And if you do that, I even said this in the article, mate, then you just cock him completely. You took a worse version of his old team, which he actually did in the summer, and then you're beating him with it, and you're going further in the league. And so basically, I actually think Upset does actually have that mentality. I don't think he wants to just hop straight to G2. I think now he's got a team that's like, it's good enough. It might not be the best. It's good enough, though, to win. I think that's where you actually show if you're a truly great player. Because I personally, in sports in general, I hate the sort of like ring chase and where you all gather together and make a super team. I like the idea that, like, if I'm really the best, well, first of all, mate, I know they didn't win LEC, but imagine if he'd have won LEC and the G2 super team existed. Like, you can't talk shit to me forever now, mate. Like, you were all in one team and I win the LEC. Like, that's what I think upset's on. So personally, I actually think upset just stays put. You know?
Sure. I mean, I think that's probably the most likely course of action, but where else do you go? Like crown shot, cards, like, you know.
It's hard, right? Yeah, you're not really going to that's why I say it's going to be a downgrade logic in terms of the individual position.
Also, so we have to talk about a possible move that could take place, which is now that Bjergsen is allegedly unretiring, which is probably the least surprising thing of all time, because if I had to spend an entire year being Bjergsen, coaching TSM and realizing that I could play better than Power of Evil, or at least be more versatile, right? I'd probably consider unretiring as well. I was hoping that maybe Bjergsen would go to a different team. I still hold out that hope, but doesn't seem likely. But
it's got Stockholm syndrome, mate. He can never leave that team. Like, father doesn't allow it.
He would have to like sell his equity in the team if he were to go to a different team as well. So maybe he doesn't want to do that. But regardless, if Bjergsen's back in and there's an import slot opening up, there is a possibility that you might see the conjunction of your the things you have an axe to grind with, Thorin, which is the possible movement of Rekkles to TSM, which would be incredible in many ways, because I just want to be in the room when they're underperforming at the end of the season and Reggie comes in to talk to Rekkles. That is the conversation I would pay almost any amount of money to see.
That's why, personally, I know people are hyping this move, because if you don't know, just go and look. The track record's proven. There's the League of Legends subreddit is just disproportionately skewed by TSM and Fnatic fans, because they aren't just fans, they're mentally ill. So as a result, they just like upvote, downvote everything, right? And basically any big topic becomes like, well, of course Perks has to go to Fnatic. Well, of course Rekkles should go to TSM. Like, there's no like real discussion. But here's why, actually, you shouldn't want that if you're both a TSM and a Rekkles fan. Hear that thing I said earlier about how Rekkles is different from the other EU players, right? Doesn't like criticism. And you're thinking, perfect for NA, right? You got... Not in TSM, idiot. In TSM, as Monty just said, if things aren't going amazingly, your boss comes in and just shouts at you, basically. And I tell you what, mate, Rekkles couldn't handle like teammates criticizing him. He's not going to sit there in America, all away from his family and his friends and support network, and have Reginald just fucking blast him in the face with stupid ass comments.
I really want this to happen, man.
Him, like, you built the wrong fucking third item. Like, give me a break. You know what? There's no way. By the way, I would say I'd watch the fuck out of that TSM Legend. That'd be amazing. So I'm just thinking it the move for Rekkles. Like, again, I think he needs sort of like a very comfortable environment. I don't think you're going to get it in TSM, unfortunately. I agree, though. If we're doing like Football Manager, which is moving people to be like a good mixture, that's a cool storyline. You know, Bjergsen and Rekkles try and like recreate their past glories and become champions. That's a cool storyline. I just personally think like I don't think it's a Rekkles. I don't think he's the player that goes to NA, basically.
No, I don't think so either. But I just fantasize about the Thorin hate consolidation into one entity.
Me, yeah. One thing I have one regret ever, which is when I actually was doing that, like a little bit of collaboration with TSM for like a year or whatever, a year and a half or something. I should have just had them send me a jersey that said Thorin on the back that was TSM, because the amount of fucking mileage I would have got out of that already. And sadly, I don't have one.
It's not too late, because here's the thing, you'll wear it, so it's still advertising for TSM.
Yeah, but here's the problem. For obvious reasons, Monty, don't really want to give TSM my home address.
That's fair.
You know,
you got to get yourself a PO box.
But yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe I could have like ship it to a neutral location, and then I just go like fucking like a spy novel or something by like Le Car, like. Like shades on or whatever, like, you know.
Just next time you work an event, just have them ship it to your hotel. There, yeah, I've cracked it for you. I've cracked it for you. You'll be there long enough to receive it. That'll work out. So do you have any other thoughts on like Bjergsen unretiring?
I've got one angle on this. It's just underwhelming, isn't it? Because the whole thing is,
it's so obvious this is going to happen.
We all just wanted to see him play 1 year vaguely close to his peak somewhere else. Like, who the hell wouldn't want to see him play in Fnatic or in some EU team? Yeah, any big team, basically. Because I'd also like to see Bjergsen with like completely different environment, no Reginald, different.
Dude, EG would be sick with Bjergsen right now.
But sadly, we just never get that for some fucked reason, you know.
But Thorin, as we've seen throughout Bjergsen's career, it really makes a big difference as to whether they're going to attend Worlds or not, because they attend, they qualified for they qualified for Worlds every year that Bjergsen was playing. Oh no. So, that might not even solve the problem either. Yeah. Like what I find so funny about this is like they don't qualify for Worlds. So here's Bjergsen back again to save TSM, except they didn't even make it to Worlds many times when he was playing. So
what I'd love is basically get that Gooby meme where the guy's busting in the door, and basically what you're gonna do is the guy on the floor, it's a kid in it, just being beaten or whatever. That's fucking Spicker, the MVP, and then Bjergsen just comes in with the Zillion face. He's like, "No, please, Bjergsen, not Zillion again, no, please!" Like next year, enjoy. It's gonna be good. Actually, I'll say that, by the way. I am interested to potentially see that matchup. That's one thing I think actually could be really good. Because he only had Spicker when he was a rookie, and even then he was pretty good. Dude, he's the MVP of the league now, and he is really good, actually. So, in theory, if they could play together, which has obviously always been one of the main problems, kind of like a lack of jungle synergy, that could be fun to watch. I think the problem is, though, and let's be real, there's one thing that looms over this conversation that ruins the whole thing. You're not getting rid of the guy you paid $6 million for in Sword Art. So the Sword Art factor just has to be there, doesn't it? Just has to. And if you are, nobody in the world's giving you even half that money back. Like, you're just going to be this dude. You're like the guy. Like, when I was a kid, right? I once wanted to go out drinking on a Friday, Monty, but I had no money. So I took some CDs to the pawn shop. And obviously, I bought all these CDs for like £10 each. And that was worth about 30 quid. And then if you know how a pawn shop works, the guy goes like, "Yeah, I can give you about £2. Like, what each? Not for the whole thing." And I had to just take it because I needed some money to go out, right? And then obviously, if you know how a pawn shop works, he essentially does the second I leave. Just put like £8 and then put that straight on the shop each. And it's like, what have I done that for? That to be like what selling sword art is at this point. You have to, you're all in. Something costs for it, so you just got to keep him, haven't you? Like, you can't just sell him for like 2 million, look like an idiot, can you? And then, by the way, I know every TSM fan keeps him, but Thorin, they've got that FTX money. Right, they've got money that's spread out over a 10-year span from a fucking cryptocurrency exchange, you idiot. That might not even exist in 1 year. Do you understand that? Like, that money is far from guaranteed. You don't want to put it this way. I will say it. That might be, maybe that's the ultimate comeuppance. Maybe that's the true Schadenfreude, Monty, is that Reginald actually spends all the 200 million, right? And then after 1 year, the government or something just shuts down this cryptocurrency. And then Reginald actually is over leveraged and down like 150 million. And then he has to just sell all a TSM. Maybe that's the sick angle that I'm hoping for. Like, that's my Bitcoin maxi type dream.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of stability, and it's like, here's the thing: you can't squeeze blood from a stone. So if the crypto market goes south and these companies go bankrupt, the deal's just over.
Like, it's over. Yeah, they probably should default on it.
You can't sue somebody for money on a contract when they don't have any money left, right? So
yes.
And the other thing that people don't understand about this deal is that this is what every fucked up thing in esports, every fucked up entity in esports does, is that they pretend. This has happened so often, guys. They pretend that a deal that they have is for esports. Guys, that FTX deal is for the TSM website network, okay? Yep. That is the thing at TSM that makes them a lot of money. If you have the Blitz app, as it constantly plays video ads at you on silent on your fucking Blitz app, that is where all of their money is coming from. It's not from the esports side. So yes, they have the FTX branding on their esports, but there's probably a lot of advertising going on these sites for FTX that is the bulk of the deal. So they're not going to just waste a bunch of money on the esports angle. Even if they do have this $200 million, a lot of that's going into different parts of the business.
By the way, piece of trivia, because obviously you have to always take into account that fans weren't around years and years ago. If people don't know, there is actually some TSM crypto-related trivia that some of you might not know from years ago. And if I tell you the story, the first thing I want you to acknowledge as I'm telling the story is obviously this would be the player this would happen to. If you know this player and you know just what his brain is like. Do you not remember that story from like 3 or 4 years ago, Monty, where Doublelift had to contact the FBI because some hackers had stolen like $200,000 worth of crypto from him or something mental.
Holy shit.
He had like a little stash and he had to contact the FBI because here's the thing with that, right? All I need is this Doublelift. Just give me this one fucking morsel and I'll give you like a break for 2 months. I won't say any shit stupid. If you give me this one morsel, just please tell me which of the two was it. Was it A, they just got the password? Listen, that could even happen, honestly. They might get like a hack dump and maybe use the same password for Gmail as he did for some app that they got. That could happen and that's not even your fault. Or is it B, and please let it be B, You just had it in like cold storage somewhere, and then they just took it, and then you were like, "Where's that thumb drive?" And then Lena or someone's like, "What are you talking about? Thumb? I don't know. I think I threw it out or something." You know, that would last me for like months. Double. If I'll go 3 months without insulting you if that's true. Just tell me. Just give me that sliver. All I need is that morsel. That's all I need. Because I can just imagine that, dude. This is why I can't handle the idea he is the sage of League of Legends subreddit. They actually in TSM had the gall to pretend he was like the shot caller from the AD carry position. Because it's like, listen, one of the things I love about Doublelift is when he says something smart, it's like an idiot savant. It just comes out every now and then, but it comes out surrounded by a bunch of shite. And so like, it's like, listen, I'm not saying he's an idiot because actually, like, that would be too far. I just think he's very scatterbrained. You know, he's a guy where a lot of the thoughts, it's like sometimes I feel like if he talks too fast, his brain lags behind and he's trying to like fact check what he's saying, and some shit just comes out, you know. And I'll say that to someone who occasionally just like myself. Occasionally, keyword of occasionally. Yeah.
Let's take a break. We're going to come back with Nymaera to get his thoughts on LJL and some of the play-ins rosters. So we'll be back in just a few minutes, guys. We've returned with our first guest today, slightly delayed because we had a lot to talk about with the Rekkles stuff and Worlds, but now we're going to talk about Worlds play-ins with my favorite anime vampire, Nymaera, who's back.
I even tried to fix my lighting. It's just not happening. It's just
look. You're very handsome. You have very sharp features. I think you should embrace it. But anyway, you're here to talk about.
You look a little bit like that photo of Monty that you got really salty over when people leave.
True.
Just saying.
I do have a leather jacket over there.
No, exactly.
Yeah, before I came back to America and got fat again. So there you go. We're here to talk about Weeb League, which is your specialty, the LJL. So. You so eloquently described when we were talking about MSI, the LJL success. People were shocked at how well they did, but you predicted that they would actually be competitive. And part of their success was that moving forward, they were actually going to be able to have 3 Korean players on the roster.
Yes.
And so now they've played another split. So can you please catch us up on DetonatioN FocusMe? Have they lived up to your expectations now that they have their full roster?
So post MSI, they came back to the LGL and they immediately went 0-3, which was pretty awful for expectations.
That's the MSI hangover.
That was the MSI hangover, and they came back and they had an awful meta read. They were playing 0 damage compositions into teams that could actually punish them. And they did rightfully get a bit smashed. They struggled to adapt to the support gang coming back in for Kazu, because Kazu kind of reminded me of like a vintage High from C9, where he would start fights not necessarily in the best way. He'd most of the time die for it, but he always knew when the fight needed to happen, whereas Gang tries to go for slightly more tricksy plays. He doesn't tend to be as reckless with how Kazu goes in for the engages, and DFM struggled to play around Gang, kind of trying to finesse it a little bit more. Eventually, they got the ball rolling again, and they kind of got that ball rolling through very strong solo lane early agency, playing through topside. And they did play 4 games back-to-back of Shaco LeBlanc as a mid-jungle duo when the Stride Breaker Shaco was super strong, where Shaco would just invis into the team, land a 90% slow so LeBlanc could pick off the AD carry. And that was great. That was awesome. I think LPL picked it up for a little bit. I'm trying to remember if it was Tarzan that did that one, but Shaco was briefly a thing. I doubt it will be after the Stride Breaker nerfs on the slow, but they found their way to kind of put their training wheels back on, get the momentum rolling again, and eventually it was quite a dominant split. They did lose the first series they played in playoffs though, which definitely rocked our confidence. They had a huge win streak leading into it, had a tiebreaker match versus the second place team, and they completely bottled it in the Juggernaut match, where apparently there was a lot of like COVID regulations on how they could leave the gaming house. They could only leave like once every 2 weeks. And because they'd smashed the regular season so hard coming into that series, I think they lost a lot of the motivation. And while it was a very close series, it wasn't what we expected to see from them, and it did.
So
they swept the back of it.
Right. So to describe what happened in the LJL playoffs is that they lost 3-2 to Rascal Jester in the first round, but then they got knocked into the losers bracket, and then 3-0'd, and then 3-0'd Rascal Jester in the final. So what was the big turning point for them from the first Rascal Jester series to the finals?
So obviously we have those external reasons for the whole kind of motivation side of it, but what it felt like in that series versus Rascal Jester is one, Sol and Secret just played out of their minds. It was a bit of a bot diff, even though Yutapon didn't play badly himself. And Sol and Secret were two Korean players that came in. I think Sol used to be on Spanu or something, like not high tier LCK players, but they came in, slotted really well into the Rascal Jester framework, and they just bodied DFM in that series. It also felt like DFM kind of tunnel visioned on a lot of different drafts and a lot of different points in the game. Sometimes in skirmishes and team fights, they would try and achieve too much. They'd engage on multiple fronts, lose on both of them, and kind of fall apart. Then coming into the semifinals, where they kind of got knocked down into that semifinal bracket, then to the finals, they seem to be a lot more poised, understanding when they shouldn't fight as well as just when they should fight, and just looked like the whole gameplay had cleaned up on an individual and a team play level. It's kind of hard to pin it down to one thing, but yeah, it was a big turnaround from obviously the Juggernaut match into the lower bracket.
What I wanted to ask you is this, right? When we actually did the episode before MSI, even though most people, like, let's just be real, they don't really tend to give a fuck about the other regions and stuff, right? But I actually thought you did a pretty good job, because one thing you outlined was 2 real win conditions that the team had. And everyone thought this is nonsense. Like, he means, you know, against like the fucking team from Australia or something like that. They didn't win. But you said even against Cloud9, they could potentially do this, which, hint, it's going to be an interesting premise for this group as I'm going to set up. So because with the way the pool system worked in the group, they treated like an LCK, an LPL, and then some other teams as though they're all equal, which is like, great job again, Riot. Every time, nailing it. But okay, actually, DetonatioN FocusMe, in theory, got the dream group, because they got the group without the LPL and the LCK team. So as a result, in theory, Cloud9 and Beyond Gaming from the PCS are their main rivals in this group, right? So even though to a fan, again, who doesn't know about the LGL, they're going to think, well, it's LGL that's going to lose. You know, like, they're easily going to... I'm going to want to outline the 2 win conditions you gave and ask if they're relevant again. So you said that Arya, the mid laner, might actually be able to like do better than Perks, basically. And actually, basically, at MSI, we saw that at certain times. And then the other angle I remember you gave was that EB, the top laner, actually had like a very unique style where basically he just sort of went like all in on lane early on. And that would actually obviously surprise some teams, especially because he was going to try it against potentially a better teams. And I remember in a couple of games, it worked. I saw him do it. Like, it did catch people off guard.
Also
so
failed horribly in the last C9 game,
Sure.
but we take the 1-2-1. Yeah.
Are these 2 or either of these present again? Because I mean, listen, it might sound outrageous, but could Arya be the best mid laner in the group?
I would say Arya is the best mid laner in the group, yeah. And there are some stats to back that up as well. I mean, he's played something like 5 LeBlanc games this year. Not only is he undefeated on it, and this includes a game at MSI, he's unkilled on LeBlanc this year. He's undefined KDAs, like, huge numbers. And in summer, he's only died once on Rise, and it's his most played champion. So he has a KDA of something like 65. The guy has been monstering. The whole top side for DFM is very coordinated, very individually strong. And I think that's really what we saw DFM beat C9 with at MSI, right? I mean, there was the infamous DFM C9 Scuttle play where Blabberg knew that if he didn't get the Scuttle, he was in a really rough position. He tried to coin flip it and just went really, really badly because, you know, he wasn't really in as much communication with Fudge, who was held in lane by Ebby, and it kind of fell apart from there. That has been a continual strong point of DFM. Ebby has been still taking those early fights, trying to wrangle and manhandle the top side of the map so they can set up for level 3, level 4 plays, particularly on the wave crash dives. It's not been as present. I don't think he's not got like the same statistic where he had the lowest CS per minute, but he'd always be ahead in CS because he's just making you even more useless. It's not quite that crazy in terms of statistics, but he's still playing a load of his early power champions, his Sets, his Renekton's, his Nars. And actually what Ebby has been doing, because this is very important to the team, is what he's done. It's just been the permanent blind picker. He's had something like a 13% counter pick rate over the entire split. Like he just doesn't care about taking.
It might actually be the lowest top laner in the entire tournament. If I had to guess, that's like ridiculously low.
It's very low, and actually the times where he does have counter pick have largely been against the first round Renekton, because in certain points of the meta that's been really, really strong. So effectively he's just never been given counter pick. And it hasn't mattered because it's allowed someone like Arya to get a really good angle for that LeBlanc, for that Rise, for someone like Silas as well. DFM have played very well around having Ebby be a pressure valve, and then also still playing towards him in the early game, so it doesn't matter about the matchup. They kind of come out on top there. And they do that through a different couple of mechanisms. Sometimes it is that wave crash dive, and sometimes it's actually by early roams, either from Ebby down to mid lane at like level 4 to 6, and sometimes it's with the Rise getting that early shove, which I guess they kind of did with the Zoe at MSI too, where they just brute force priority, then move out of the lane. But they've done that similarly with Arya moving up for very early plays too. So basically the early game playmaking has tended towards topside. the extra bow to their string to their bow this time though is actually because Gang is back in. It's not like Kazu, who plays like 4 or 5 champions, always dies in the 2v2 because I mean he's a coach playing a support. It just tends to happen. The Utapon has also been an option to be a hyper carry as well. They haven't needed him to be, and also actually stylistically in the region, it's not really been what they've needed either, because the other 2 top teams in the region have been hyper carry bot teams. They basically just nullify bot and they play through topside. That's been their preferred style of play, but it's another option for them, which makes them quite a difficult team to prepare for.
So when you're looking at this, because we, as a reminder of what happened at MSI for the people who weren't watching that other episode, who may not know anything about this team. So Kazu was the coach of the team who was playing support at the time, and they split their games 1-1 with C9. You're mentioning the game they got ahead early, and they surprised a lot of people in doing so. It's really fun that we actually get to see this rematch again now that they're at the full strength of their roster. So I'm curious, like, we don't know for sure what the meta surrounding Worlds is going to be because, well, I mean, Sheepy might know next because we'll talk to him about that because he's actually in these boot camps. But it's hard to know until the actual professional matches are played, as teams are experimenting with these patches that have happened when we haven't had any professional games going on in the lead up to Worlds. But do you think that there was a meta advantage at the time for Detonation FocusMe when it comes to MSI, or do you think that given what they've seen through the summer season and the fact that Riot has been very explicit about not changing a whole hell of a lot, like they've tried to make tweaks for the professional scene, but it seems like for the most part, a lot of what was strong at the end of the summer splits is still going to be viable, and there's going to be some additional champions that they're trying to make viable as well. So do you think from a meta perspective that Detonation FocusMe was better suited to MSI or better suited now to the meta?
I think they're stronger than they were at MSI. I think the meta, it's a bit hard to kind of track both stats of that, I suppose. Going into Worlds, there are a couple of things which I'm worried about, particularly Lucian. I think that if you allow Lucian through a draft one time, particularly since it is a single round robin of best of ones, and you get like a Lucian Nami and Sven's playing it, and normally you think, hey, we can play through topside and nullify bot side, that doesn't really get to happen against some of these super powerful bot lane picks. I don't really know what's happening with Rise right now. I'm not sure if he's survived those nerfs. I think that teams are still pretty happy to play him, but it's not quite as overbearing as it would have been in the mid game and late game, because I think with the E cooldown nerf, there's a couple of breakpoints where you could get a second EQ off in a kill combo, which doesn't necessarily happen, so that affects your mid jungle 2v2s, which of course DFM loves to play around. I think that Arya is going to be absolutely fine, though. He's permanently had like Aurelia, LeBlanc, Rise, TF contested. I think they've only lost like one game on those series of champions throughout the entire split. It's just a question of what's going to happen in terms of picks you can nullify bot lane. Has Varus fallen out the meta because obviously he had some cooldown removed on his max rank Q? I think they're going to be fine, but it's so weird, and particularly in plans, because when you get to groups, a lot of there are some picks which float around in plans which don't make it to groups. I think Echo Jungle in 2019-20, I'm trying to remember which one that was. A couple of times these picks will come around, completely screw the meta, and then just be gone by groups when teams figure out actually it's just not really working. But the volatility with so few games in a best of one format is rough. I think that the meta is largely pretty stable for DFM. I think they have the tools to make it work.
So a lot of, I think many of the changes that might be coming in the meta is like just watching kind of the pro players' accounts as they're moving through the like solo queue during the boot camp, is that we've seen a lot more kind of interesting jungle. It seems like the biggest meta shift might be coming in the jungle overall because we've seen like the Zed with the Gore Drinker being played. Looks like there's some Talia being played against Talon,
Lilia.
Like there, So there's a lot of changes, it seems like, to the jungle in terms of either mages or assassins coming back into play. How does this line up with what Steel can do in the jungle? Because you're talking a lot about the 2v2 in mid and jungle, and I think it's changed quite a bit.
It has. I mean, the great thing about Steel is that he's, at some point in his career, played pretty much everything. He was a big Talia player, he was a big Nocturne player, even when that was out of meta, loads of Trundle. Mechanically, I've never really been that worried about him. I think the problem at MSI was that we saw DFM be practiced as a team around playing around Udyr. And then when Udyr was taken off the table, they didn't necessarily know how to play around topside early, because Udyr was the champion to do that early. You couldn't do that with a Hecarim. You couldn't necessarily do that with stuff like Morgana either. I'm interested to see actually whether they start flexing stuff to mid, because Arya has been a Kiana player in the past too. Just use that as the flex pick. I actually wonder if it's less important to have Steel be good on that champion and just have the threat of giving it to him, just the threat and having it between the flex in terms of the AD assassins anyway. I mean, Steel's been playing a load of Talon in solo queue. I don't know if it's really going to be an individual problem, though. I think this is going to be one of those things you have to work out. How does this slot into the team dynamic? Because I think individually, mechanically, these players can play pretty much whatever you want. These are the most flexible LGL players that we've ever had, alongside being individually strong in lane and stuff like this. It's just whether it slots into the team's framework after that. And that is what I'm less certain about, because Steel has played stuff like Nidalee in the past, recently in this split. He's not really been an assassin player in the jungle, though, for quite a while. Not with this lineup, anyway. So that one is a bit more of a question mark.
I'm also curious because if we had to, and this may be resolved right now, but if we had to have the major criticism of Cloud9 this year would be mid-jungle synergy.
Yep.
Has been their major point of weakness. And I think that they haven't had time to fix it. And that's what we've come to talk about on this show previously is with certain people, is that it's been very difficult, especially if you were an MSI team, to have a few weeks to actually dig into some underlying issues that a team has, because it's just like you're constantly prepping for the next week and doing the best you can to like slap band-aids on the problems, because you don't have the opportunity of multi-week downtime or multi-week practices without matches in order to fix core underlying issues. And if you recall, like Perks came to NA pretty late earlier in the year. And then it's just been like, okay, well, they win spring, then they're immediately off to MSI. Then after MSI, they take a week off, come back, and are thrown right back into it. Yeah, the win everything problem. So now, I mean, they were eliminated from playoffs earlier. You know, they've had actual time to do this. So this problem might have been addressed by this juncture. But I am very curious, because it seems like if we're talking about kind of jungle assassins and mid jungle synergy being incredibly important to the upcoming Worlds meta, that pretty much dives right into C9's weakness. So,
and into DFM strength, might I say.
Yeah.
So I think in terms, well, what's really interesting to me is if I look at, so my hot take is, if DFM finished top 2, it's not an upset. That's my hot take. I think that you look at the matchup they have against the Pool 1 teams, and if you consider that the wildcards, yes, there's volatility in there, but DFM are aiming to be beating the Pool 1 teams and not really be contending with the Pool 2 teams. Against C9, I think they have a more coordinated top side in general, and that mid-jungle 2v2 is going to be a very important factor to that. If Blabber is not well coordinated with his lanes, I think they're going to get absolutely rolled by DFM through what they've shown to be one of their major strengths in the regular season. Beyond is a different story, but I think particularly with the jungle dynamic, that is the big thing to keep an eye on, because yes, it could also be Blabber individually just starts solo killing everyone on the map on Zed. That's a potential that could happen. But if it comes down to like multi-person dynamics, I think DFM have the advantage in that, and they've shown that's their comfort zone as well.
I actually thought the angle that people didn't really notice from MSI, because you know that some people just don't watch the games when it's like the best of ones, or they watch just the big game and they assume, you know, like certain results will definitely, like that'll be a stomp, etc. The one everyone forgets is this. I'll tell you the timeline, right? When DFM beat Cloud9, everyone was just clowning Cloud9, like, you fucking idiots. How could you ever lose? I'll tell you when that kind of stopped for a moment was when they almost beat fucking Dam1 and they had inhibs down and they were onto the Nexus towers. Suddenly it wasn't as funny at that point in time, was it? Because a lot of people thought Dam1 was the best team in the fucking world. So I remember that was the moment, dude, where I was like, even if someone thought the other one was like a pure fluke, like, you can't trip over and beat like the best Korean players and beyond the Nexus tower. Now listen, inexperience, you know, they are amazing players, they can come back, but like, that was the result where, even though, and I hate the idea of moral victories, but if you're from such a small region and you're facing a Titan like that, that is essentially a moral victory, right? It shows something even years ago, again, would have been impossible.
And I think what that kind of keys into as well, because you're kind of talking about the experience thing, what we saw with V3, which of course Sheepy will be remembering very happily, because UOL just destroyed V3 on the world's playing stage, is that they really suffered from their rookie status. They mentally just crumbled eventually. You know, they've gone 2 games in, got a bit rolled, and then the rest of the stage went very poorly for them. Arya, in particular, needed this MSI to get rolled. And this is another thing which we kind of mentioned on that MSI episode previously before that, in terms of Arya might have a shit first game. And he did. He got solo killed at like level 2, level 3 by Silas as a Renekton. That should never happen in that matchup. He messed up the wave. okay, sure, go next. Ended up having some very good Zoe games. Ended up having a great LeBlanc game as well to finish off their game versus Infinity. Coming into Worlds now, this isn't going to be his first taste at international competition. He can probably settle in a bit. And actually looking at the format and the schedule and stuff, they get their first game versus UOL, and then they get to go into C9. So C9, one of the most important games. They've had a game before that to settle in. It is 2 games in one day. They're used to that regionally, though. I think actually in terms of like the mental game and getting the team settled, things have worked out pretty well this year and for this tournament. For DFM to come in and hit the ground running, I think that's probably working in their favor.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and it seems like, I mean, there's lots of kind of ways to qualify because they're I mean, with the Vietnamese teams not attending, right? They're
in this group as well, right? I could. This is what people always forget about groups. Everyone still thinks it's like season 5, and whoever the heavy favorites are just beat everyone. It's like, listen, first of all, in this group, it's not even impossible that the fucking favorites lose games. But this is one of those groups where, like, when you add in, like, you haven't played a region, you've never played that team before. This could be one of those crazy groups where it's like all over the place. People are getting wins and losses, and no one knows even who gets out until, like, you know, the last 4 games or something crazy of the group. You know, that can happen.
Absolutely, yeah. And it is just such a small amount of games that is very volatile. And of course, when you look at the context of Group A as well, when you've got, if you finish 3rd, 4th, and you do slip like a stupid game and you let a DFM get 2nd instead, you let C9 drop down to 3rd.
Yep.
They have to play off in a best of 5 against a very scary team, most likely. And that's not to say that's impossible, but it's just an extra stumbling block to kind of set up at that point. And I think that's why Group B is, kind of like, to me, this is kind of like a positive to, yes, maybe Play-ins is worth watching, because this is actually good competition for the first time in Play-ins for a little while, actually.
Yes.
You can make an argument for any one of these 5 teams making a decent show for themselves. And I think that's very important just to kind of give some hope to us Fiesta regions.
I mean, you know what's interesting too about the format is that I'm not even sure being in Group B is ideal, because you're only actually eliminated if you get last place in the group. And the problem is that for your qualification match in Group B, ostensibly you're going to have to either beat LNG or Hanwha Life, right? So unless you're coming in first in your group, now Group B is amazing if you come in first, right? Because you automatically qualify. But if you have to go through that bracket, it's actually a lot worse to be in Group B, because there are 2 very strong teams in Group A that you would assume would be a shoo-in in a best of 5. So in many ways, whoever doesn't make it out of first place in Group B is probably just dead.
Well, at least if you're top 2, you are likely to play one of the... Because I do think that Group A got the strongest Pool 1 teams and probably the weaker of the Pool 2 teams. Of course, with this kind of format, and who the hell knows what's going to happen with Peace if Vizicsacsi is going to actually level them up. No idea on that front. Top
that was
2nd
random.
place. Yeah, don't play for a year, get Worlds, I guess. Yeah. But if you get 2nd, you are probably feeling okay about that too. So top 2, that's good. But as you were just saying, if you lose a stupid game, like, your Worlds run could just be complete sculled. And that could be based off of 1 bad play, 1 bad draft. The amount of pressure on these players to understand, like, the format of that, if you actually end up kind of like letting your focus slip, that's pretty monumental, considering that a lot of these players will be at this level playing at this level for the first time, for a limited amount of times, and have a lot of that pressure coming from their region. So yeah, I think Group B it's fun, and if you are on good form, it's great for you. It's best for the top 2 teams, but if you slip, it's very unforgiving.
I was just looking up the accounts of the DetonatioN FocusMe players at the boot camp.
I've been watching them a bit, yeah.
I just have to say, I love that Utapon and Gang have named themselves CLG Elements and CLG Chauster on the
old
ladder.
School.
That is old school references. Because even Elements hasn't been on CLG since like 2010, because he was, most of his time was spent on Curse rather than that. So that is some really OG like meme names right there. Which
maybe not the names you want to be channeling, but maybe trying to turn the clock back to better days.
The other thing to say as well is this, right? Because, again, most people treated this like, look, it's obvious it's just going to be Hanwha, LNG, Cloud9, and Beyond Gaming. That's it. Like, we're still in Season 5, because, again, people keep forgetting how the last 3 years of League of Legends gone. But basically, if you look at the groups, because basically if those teams got out, obviously the Korean and the Chinese team, they basically have to go into one group. Yeah. That's all that can happen. So realistically, if this team can get out, the LGL team, they're going to be in A or B. So they're either going to be in the Nymaera one where you got in theory the two of the best teams in the world in FPX down one, or you get the group where there's more parity, but you still do get like EDG, T1. You know, it's going to be hard groups no matter what.
We are going full speed into the group's iceberg. Like, we make it out, and then it's just say goodbye, go down with the ship. It'll be fun, get some good games on stage, and of course the LGL has never had a group stage appearance before. That would be huge for the region. Yeah, I mean they've got to the play-ins knockout stage, and they lost versus, I think there was one versus EDG that we ended up losing back in like 2018 or something. But that's the furthest we ever gone. We never made it out of play-in, so it'd be huge for this team to make it that far. It's kind of like the holy grail, and if you do take a game or two off for some teams and groups, then you've done the region incredibly proud. Which does add a different context into it, and that's also why it's very important to kind of watch this playing stage for the side of DFM, particularly because this is the strong. I mean, we said this back in MSI again, but this is the strongest team this region could possibly produce. These are like the greatest players in each individual role. They don't get better than this. So if they fail now, LGL is really not looking so hot. There are also, there is talent there, but is it enough to get a group stage appearance? If this team can't do it, absolutely not.
By the way, that's an example of how, even when Riot thinks they're doing something, they always fuck up and something else happens. So they were like, we've designed a playing system that will allow minor regions and wildcards to have a chance to, oh no, you have to play EDG in a best of 5.
Yeah.
What?
Oops.
Well, how am I supposed to do that though? I've never played anyone that good. Like, give me a break. A best of 5.
I do appreciate that like the top teams are automatically going to groups to the world's main event, because like at least you eliminate some of that problems, and the best of 5s are somewhat exciting. Because the thing about these group stages is that LNG is in there, and LNG has to be the way better than any other of the teams in the play-ins, because LNG came into the LPL playoffs like an eighth seed. But let's go through their list. So first off, they only lost to the two teams in the finals, FPX and EDG. So LNG is already a potential winner of Worlds. Like, they are already potentially
as an outside.
Good.
Yeah, of course, dark horse.
An outside shot. But but they are definitely like a dark horse to win the whole tournament based on this. And let's go through the list of names of teams they beat. Suning, last year's world finalists, right? Top with Knight. Then they took out reigning MSI champions RNG, and then they only lost to FPX and EDG. So, like, this is an extremely good team. Like, Hanwha blows compared to LNG, right? So, I think realistically what we're looking at is probably, unless something very weird happens, Hanwha is probably going to be in the actual bracket of these play-ins with whatever team comes out of Group B. So, like, that's the matchup that will probably occur.
Which means that Fate will be cruel. They're going to drop a stupid game and get second. That has to happen now. Like, that's the problem with this kind of format, is that it's fun because of the volatility, but it's also kind of screwed because of it too. Just one stupid game, one bad draft, and suddenly you've got a potential world semi-finalist and finalist that's you've got to play in as Unicorns Love, as DFM, as Galatasaray. Like, good luck, have fun, dream's over.
It's true. Anything can happen in these best of ones. So that's an outside possibility. But
you expect one of these teams to crumble like in one game. It happens every Worlds. Like, there's one game where
it's a single round robin too. So it's like
no takebacks.
Being as they've got obviously a whole bunch of Koreans, which are being part of the focus of this show, right? Do they actually in DFM try to ever do? I mean, the problem is they're never really the underdog in their region, but would you speculate that they'll try any like crazy drafts, or will they kind of just draft like the strength champions and just hope they can play standard in a way?
They tend to bring one or two things. Even at MSI, they brought out the Urgot in that one game against Damwon. That worked out pretty well for them. There is a likelihood that they bring something for the table. I don't know if they should, because this was the problem with V3 last year, where they kind of went away from the tried and true, and they just kind of fell apart. I would like them to try maybe like a top lane special for Ebby. I think that's worked out for them before. Partly because teams will be just expecting him to play like the same 4-5 champions he's played for the entirety of the summer split. But outside of that, he has a huge champion pool. He's played lots of different stuff before. It's just he's never really been called on to do that. But if you kind of get that false sense of security around that, I think Ebby might be the player to watch on that front.
Because the funny thing to me is this, because I know people have already forgotten the first part of when you came on the show, where you pointed out that they didn't have they had their coach playing in that game.
Yes.
That's, to me, if they'd have won that game against Damwon, that is actually the single game greatest upset in the history of fucking League of Legends. Like, that shouldn't even be possible. In theory, they could actually even be better this time. People are going to think it's the opposite, could be worse. They could be better, and they've got the group that really is like, there's a chance on the table.
And I think the thing with having Gang back in the roster is that it kind of solidifies this whole Exodia thing, the Infinity Gauntlet, all of the other Megazord references and stuff. Like, every player on DFM is a huge playmaker. They have this just massive clutch factor because everyone has the individual mechanics and the confidence to pull off big plays. I think probably one of the biggest plays we've had all season came from Gang, where he gets like a 5-man headbutt pole in a game to decide it versus the second best team, where they were like against Soul Point. Every one of these players has had moments to really shine. And I think at Worlds, that's the kind of factor you are very you're very happy to have that, because it is often through big individual performances that the minor regions really start getting up through the ranks and start doing an Albus Nox Luna, start doing, you know, like Gambit when they've been very strong in the past too from the LCL. Having Gang have that factor, but also not dropping back on the basics of his warding, his roaming, and his laning as well, gives DFM a very stable roster across the board. Like, they shouldn't be that easy to rattle, and I think that's going to be a big bonus for them.
So what are your predictions? Because you've made some very astute predictions in the past. What are your predictions looking at Group B and how you think this is going to shake out? Obviously, that's really difficult because there's so many factors here. There's like these play-ins are kind of ridiculous in terms of format because just having a single round robin best of one. Now, granted, only the bottom team is eliminated, so it's not that bad, right? The format itself is kind of forgiving in that way. But we're coming into a new meta where nobody has seen, even the pro players, nobody has seen any professional matches on this meta, which increases the level of volatility pretty significantly overall. And you're dealing with best of ones where, like, you know, if somebody underestimates one champion with the zero data they have on professional matches and it comes into the game and it turns out it's super OP, well, that could just ruin your day right there, even if you are the better team.
Okay, so I think against C9, if C9 get Lucian and they play around a strong Lucian bot lane, I think C9 win. I think DFM need to not allow Sven to just pop off and be vintage Sven. Apart from that, I think DFM win through topside. I think that C9 have a losing matchup stylistically against DFM, particularly when they're coming in on strong form. So that's my logic for that. Beyond, I think are being super slept on in general. However, I also think they have a bad stylistic matchup versus DFM because they play through hypercarry bot, and some of the best hyper carries in minor regions are actually on the other best teams in the LGL. We've got a guy called Honey who plays for Axis, who I believe led the world DPM chart for most of the season. He has like a huge amount of damage. He's a big Jinx Aphelios player. And DFM would just play to nullify that. They were very good at holding hyper carries in check and just, again, rolling through topside and making sure that there was no stable platform for these hyper carry AD carries to play off of. I think Doggo is absolutely fantastic. I just think that DFM have had recent relevant practice against similar styles of play. So I actually look at both the Pool 1 teams. I think DFM looking pretty okay in them. I think there's actually a decent chance DFM come first because of that, unless you have someone coming in really, really well prepared, volatile best of ones, UOL pull out Orianna bot again. I mean, I know they don't have Gadget, but they've always been very good at kind of theory crafting a lot of those things. But I think DFM are in with a serious shot at top 2, and I don't think that's an over-exaggeration. Hopefully, I can back up that with the research and the play that they've shown, but I think that DFM should have high hopes. I think that my prediction is DFM get top 2.
I mean, in my fantasy world, because I'm a sadist, what I would want to see here is that either Unicorns of Love or DFM get first place, Cloud9 gets second place, because I want to watch the Hanwha Life Cloud9 Best of 5. I want to watch that.
That would be wonderful. Yeah. I actually think it'd be very interesting seeing something like a DFM versus a HLE as well on another side, because obviously Ebby has been so strong for such a long time, and he'd be up against Morgan. You get to see Ari versus Chovy. Chovy is, of course, just an incredible individual laner, but Ari's no slouch. The question is then, would Arya be able to like contain Chovy enough while the rest of the map runs rampant, or is that just going to be Chovy diff eventually at the end of the day? So I think it's going to be entertaining either way. But yeah, I've got high hopes for our Japanese boys.
I'm just going to say, look, I'm not hating on anyone, but if fucking Morgan loses in a best of 5 to a Japanese top laner, fired immediately, and you have to actually recruit a real top laner.
Well, it's no surprise.
You have to recruit a real top laner now. I'm telling you.
Well, this is exactly what happened with Vizicsacsi. 2019 Worlds, people will forget. Ebby solo killed Vizicsacsi and took a game off of him. He's gone for a year. He retires. Now he's back. There is
Sent to the showroom. Yeah.
there is the outside chance that he's come back into peace just to have that happen again. There is the chance that happens, and I'd love that from the bottom of my heart.
Well, I mean, the only way I can get the C9 versus Hanwha is if C9 actually is below both Detonation and the Unicorns of Love in that group. So that would be very spicy if that happens.
Thing is, though, I have to say, Monty, I actually love that we on that on the episode where Atlas just called that he wanted Hanwha to go in this way so they could style or not. Because here's the thing, right? They've even got the group, because as you say, because they got the super mega ones, well, at least it wasn't like an insane group beyond that. They got all, in theory, the bad teams. So at least in the group stage on the other group, I do literally expect that to basically be like when Season 3 Faker went to Worlds. Like, Chovy should literally just be like floating around the map like some mega like fucking anime villain that cannot possibly be beaten. And even when you throw everything at him, he just emerges from the smoke like, you have not even grazed me, just destroying people. Basically, like that scene at the end of fucking Rogue One where Darth Vader comes in. That's what it's going to be like when Chovy rolls into this group, just killing motherfuckers, force hold, destroying them like saber. Like, oh, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait for that so much.
There was the Season 5 game versus Bangkok Titans as well with the Olaf mid. That one sticks in my mind rent free, because wasn't it like a blind pick Aurelia mid and all? Faker just picks up Olaf and just kills him level 2. That was amongst the best international moments I can remember.
Dude, my favourite era of Faker was the years where, like, he would actually find something like Master Yi mid, like totally broken in mid, but then as a result, he was too good in solo queuing because you never played an actual competitive player. It's like, that's just like the sign you are just like a god at that point, you know?
Season 5 Summer, didn't he play something like 18 champions and win on them twice or more? He was
something like that, yeah.
That was amongst the most dominant splits of players had ever. That was ridiculous.
That was the one
like,
where in the final he played a mid-Riven when that wasn't even a fucking meta champion and still shit all over. Admittedly not the great. I think it wasn't the greatest. It wasn't the greatest, but even so, it's still a win. Still a win. And he did that gangster fucking sidestep of the fucking Cassiopeia ult, which was just like, oh. That was when he was still fucking beat. Because I was at that finals. That was one of the ones where it was in that fucking like stadium or that, like, college gymnasium or whatever. And I remember just being there, being like, hope it's a good series. And then it was
look, at least you got that. At least you got that sick Riven like solo kill on the Nogday, because that's one of the all-time great League of Legends plays when he's turret diving and just like looks away like the perfect like frame perfect on the Cassio ult and just kills him. I was like, there's mentally for Nogday, there's just no coming back from that.
That's it. That was it. It's over.
That was a pretty okay series.
I'm looking at Chovy's account right now, and it's mid Tryndamere, and
isn't Vi
that's a real
thing as well? Lethal Templar, Vi mid. Been seeing that being played.
Yes, he is playing that with
apparently, Monty, mid Tryndamere is a thing, because I have a guy on my Discord server who was challenger in NA. And he only one-tricks Tryndamere, and the whole reason why, Monty, is because if people haven't played against it, you can just like ruin not only the mid laner, you can ruin just like the whole jungler and everything. Like, people have no clue how to play against because it's just not ever played, is it? So it's like that. If someone like Chovy plays it again, people think he's like just like he's just disrespecting. It's like, no, mate, that'll actually be really hard if you know play against.
Also, split pushing is good again now, so it works well too once you get into the mid and late game.
It's not a big LGL thing, split pushing. There's a lot of reasons for that, but because like a lot of the LGL, like pretty much every team has 2 Koreans. Unless you could DFM or the Hawks, you have 3 because there's like a naturalized citizen in there. Because you're working across multiple languages. I was talking about this with Kazu actually on Twitter because there was like one really stupid game where there was a team which just like chose to team fight into a team which just could infinitely disengage them, and the language barrier makes it really hard to communicate very precise rotations around the map. Like, maybe your mid doesn't know how to communicate.
I know I asked you this last time, but do they actually just speak English?
They don't. I think what they do is they tend to speak. So, for instance, in DFM, I think Steel translates from Korean to Japanese because he is like
right. I see.
bilingual. Yeah, so I'm fairly sure that they stick to Japanese most of the time because like English
That's
literacy
probably better
in
than actually
Japan
trying to both do English, though. I always thought the Chinese teams were a bit silly in that sense, like trying to just both have a language you're not that good in, you know.
On the whole, Japanese people, even if they do know English to a decent level, they don't necessarily want to speak it in public because like they want to be perfect at it before they speak it. That's been my understanding of it. Because my brother lived out there for 18 months and people still wouldn't want to speak to him.
I just wish the same thing applied in the West and all the fucking weebs wouldn't try speaking Japanese when they barely know any of it. Take some cues from your fucking heroes. Shut the fuck
up. Hey, this is the one region in the world where you could like make an anime reference and only feel like half bad about it. Like mostly, it's still like pretty bad, but like you get like a little bit of
exactly.
But like, because it's really hard to like to communicate like the real minutiae about. I am like 3 minions away from this CS. In like 45 seconds, I'm going to have like this roam timing or something. It makes it really hard to do like the really precise map movements, which makes it really cool that DFM have managed to do that in some cases with TF and Rise. They're like one of the few teams that have done that a bit more, but they haven't really had practice against teams that would do the same thing. Not necessarily. I think the only team that would do that is like V3, and that's the team which they have mostly the same roster that they had last year in terms of like they still have the guy in mid that plays loads of Galio and stuff like that. But yeah, split pushing is not necessarily something which happens in the LGL. Like we don't have Fiora players, we don't really have stuff like that. We've got like Camille players, but they play team fight Camille. They don't really do it to go hit structures in the sideline. So if it does come down to like super split pushing, I would be academically quite interested in seeing how DFM deal with that because we don't really have to see that regionally.
To be fair about the split pushing point, I guess it wasn't really true split pushing that we were seeing at the end of the summer split. It was more like play Rise or Twisted Fate and then teleport into a lane and then dive the turret and then kill the second turret and then group up in team fight. So since the introduction where, you thought maybe with Hullbreaker you might be getting some more true split pushing, that has not actually happened in the meta as of yet. But with Trinidad, definitely could.
Just basically like overstaying in lane and thinking split pushing would do, but that's just called being a bad player who wins. That's not actually a tactic.
Yeah, we've had some very bad LJL teams do that this split too. I think actually the very worst game I've ever cast was from this split between our two last place teams, where it was like half of the criteria to being a perfect Monty game where there are more towers killed than players killed, but that's because the players were playing so badly. No one could physically die because no one could hit anything. But yeah, I'm waiting to see if it was bad.
The accidental good game.
Yeah.
It's all right. The Monty PvE games don't exist anymore. The Riot changed the entire game, so that's not even a good way to play. So I can't even appreciate those.
Yeah.
In the modern day, you're not going to see any fucking perfect games. That doesn't exist anymore in League of Legends, mate, because everyone just goes for shit all the time, whether ahead or behind. So there's never going to be a perfect game.
But
you can't have perfect information like you used to have, so it's hard to do that.
But what's more interesting is then basically when you are forced to make a trade, which most teams are unless you're super dominant. Like there was one of the EU Masters teams was like up in Dragons and Heralds because they just won so hard. But most teams will have to make a choice between the two of them. DFM makes a choice of Herald because they don't really care about Dragon stacking. They'd rather just get the early gold, snowball through their top side again, break down the Zeta turrets, and just like close out the game before Soul Point even becomes a thing. It will be interesting to see if they have the mechanical brute strength to do that against this like caliber of teams up at this level. I mean, I've got faith in them, but the question is, will they stall out at some point? Because occasionally when they played through topside, and this was quite obvious in their a couple of the games in the semifinals versus Axes, they would stall out after like the wave crash dive didn't really work on topside level 3, level 4, and they stalled out from that point. So maybe if teams can nullify that very early pressure, maybe they can start playing around dragons a bit more. That's something which I'm again just interested in seeing how they deal with that.
That's actually a meta point I feel like is under-discussed. Is like, because obviously, as you say, you have to choose. Sometimes you trade, sometimes even your comp basically implies, like, if you're playing heavily around top, you're going to go for the Herald maybe, right? What I don't think people always talk about is, actually, the Herald is pretty straightforward. Like, you kind of know what you're going to do with that if you take it. The Dragons, dude, I still think that there's teams who don't understand how their comp relates to this dragon. They just take it as though it was like the old dragon where you fight for it for gold or something. Like, some of them just take a dragon where it's like, dude, what do you do with that? Oh, they get it. It's like they don't actually do anything. They don't apply pressure in a certain sense, or they don't play. Some teams I feel like even some like when I was watching LCS, some of those teams, it's like I don't know what you think you got from that dragon because you're not doing anything with it,
Particularly if you just watch them take it as well. We just kind of turn up and you just kind of like golf clap while the dragon goes down. A lot of teams just do that because they're looking for like a miracle play, but then they lose the chance to do a cross map. They lose the map to lose the chance to push in waves and etc. But yeah, particularly with Harold, as you said, it's largely pretty straightforward, particularly when you have like a lot of demolitionist champions. Like if Aphelios doesn't matter, if he ever has Severum Crescendum, he just kills the turret outright. Ziggs, obviously Doggo is a big Tristana player and beyond. That'll be relevant at some point. Lots of champions will, and even if you buy something like early Sork boots, actually mages do a good job of killing towers. If you push in with a Herald with someone just remotely okay at killing towers, that's like a whole part of the map which then vision is denied from, and you can start incrementing your own vision into as well. And a lot of teams don't necessarily know how to turn the screws as effectively as they could on that. They skip steps when they lose those towers and they try and reclaim the map.
Yeah, I was curious if we were seeing, this is just a side point about Herald, but I was curious if we were seeing kind of earlier Herald takes in certain playoff regions compared to the regular season. So I asked Magic, Tim, who runs Oracle's Elixir, to look at that. Let me just pull up my tweets with him.
We convinced him to get the LJL Academy League on that site, actually. Yeah, we told him about it. Yeah.
No, that site's great, and I appreciate the kind of stuff he does, but I have to search Twitter real quick so I can actually get the
Logically, there should just be a visual novel of whatever an LGL Academy team is in that high school. Like, and that's just them with all, like, all the women they're trying to interact with, and like all the fucking, they get all shy. I can't talk to her. Oh, God.
It's Yandere
game last night. Exactly. There you go.
I think it's like a couple of the. I think V3 was initially funded by a high school as well, actually.
So, really?
Yeah. They're like a technical thing, and
they sometimes do play like a high school team. So
yes,
that is appropriate.
But V3's academy team is actually doing very well.
Nice.
Apparently internationally they've been doing all right. Like they've been taking games off of some international academy teams, which is pretty good for the region. Particularly considering that the LGL has typically not been great at developing talent. We just kind of like bring in some Korean imports, throw them away after a year. Everyone shuffles and changes places. But now we've actually had our first like academy league thing alongside Sky and Grand. So hopes in the future there.
I have to say, one thing I do hope for the future, or actually the LGL, is I know in games like StarCraft, this happened a lot, actually. People don't know that in StarCraft, when basically the Korean scene died off and then they'd region locked it, so you couldn't just go to any other tournament. You couldn't do that. Basically, what happened was there were a whole load of Korean players who just like dispersed around the world, and they went to like obscure countries and teams and places. Because people don't know, some of the ones who are pros are sort of all in on that for life. Like they're not just going to go back after they quit school at 15 and then suddenly like try and hop back in because you're too behind. So they were sort of like, look, I'm going to ride this StarCraft thing till the end. My hope is this, that at some point in the future, even if they're washed, some actual like legit name from like LCK or something just comes over, even if it's for 1 year, because that would be fun. I always thought that would be that's the part that's actually underdeveloped, because obviously the Brazilian teams just never fucking did anything when they had the Koreans. We never really got to see, but they never got to do anything internationally. That's the problem. I always wanted to see basically like some players that all they have to do is pull it together for one tournament. It can be fun.
We did have Blank come to the LJL. And that was last year. So we had Blank Imperion on Sengoku, and he did pretty well. I mean, he then went back, and I'm not sure that was a Blank issue. Gonna throw that one out there. Like, he was definitely part of that team, but was it like really him? Jury's out. But he was very interesting to see in the LGL, because he was one of the few junglers that like hard played towards mid jungle in 2020, and this is when Ari was on a different team and his jungle was basically non-existent. He was just having to win the mid jungle 2v2 by himself. But it was Blank and Imperion who were like both ex T1 players playing on this one team, and it was really cool to see how they would interact with like DFM's mid jungle and of course CJ, with Ari just kind of like popping off on his lonesome, just trying to 1v9. But yeah, then there's the whole problem of like, okay, so you've got these two players, what's happening with the rest of the map? And sometimes they just weren't really fit for purpose. And the thing with Sengoku last year is that it felt like they were built to win the region, and they got second in spring, and they completely fell apart in summer. So because you only get like, only first place goes internationally, it was like a complete failure for that team, and it kind of fell apart, sadly for them. Because there are some players which came into the LGL and just like monstered in the past. Like Gango came into the region during his heyday back in, I don't know, 2017, something like that. And he hit for a split or two. He was absolutely monstering. He's still in the LGL now, but he's kind of fallen off his peak a little bit. But there are players who have tried that before.
All right, so I found it. So here, let me link this for you guys so you can take a look at it yourselves. Let's put it in our chat here. But basically, like I had Tim run the first dragon in playoffs and the change versus the regular season. And so versus First Herald. And as you can see, First Herald basically in almost every region was coming earlier in the playoffs, and First Dragon was overall coming later. And especially in Korea, which had the earliest First Herald out of any of the playoffs regions at 8.9 minutes, it was really noticeable if you are watching the LCK playoffs that they were going for this. And I think this is probably going to be a trend that continues at Worlds. Because of the pressure you can put on the map, the extra gold you get from second plates, and also just I think a general deprioritization of dragons. So it's something just to keep an eye on, especially as we go into these plans.
It's that ever vague term tempo, which people think is like, oh, how quickly you're going from lane to lane. It's like actually no, it's more like putting someone into check in chess, where like you go into a dangerous position, they have to move in a certain way and stuff like that. And sometimes Drake kind of is quite a low value move because you're not actually preventing the other team from doing anything.
And you're not getting Herald, really anything for yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas, especially compared to Herald plates.
Yeah, if you put like a Herald into a lane with like an AD carry or a Ziggs or something, like you need to respond to that. And even if you do that, sometimes the response is like, we have an Aphelios. He kills tower on his own. We don't need a Herald. But yeah, stuff like Dragon. And I'm trying to remember who was saying this. I think it was one of the Korean pros around MSI or something. They were just saying, wow, EU just as a region, even in solo queue, just over prioritizes dragons. Like they just go for it way too much. It takes the pressure off. It changes the map and how it works, and suddenly you've actually got like access to 3 or 4 more waves on your AD carry or onto a carry that needs it. You don't have vision being put into your jungle, and that can like change how the next 5 to 10 minutes play. Where even though like the immediate reward you feel good about it, it's like a bit of dopamine rush. It doesn't last beyond that though, unless you can actually convert it into a soul point, which actually means a game-ending objective.
And worth noting too that Europe had the latest First Heralds out of any region, and this is we don't have data on China, guys, because we just can't get access to that, but I mean this includes like even like Brazil, CIS, like Latin America, and Europe is at 9.5 minutes, and that's tied with Latin America for like the latest average First Herald in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it looks like like the LGL stuff is like I don't really know how much stock to put in like change in playoffs, because then you've got like a load of series between like some teams which are just hugely fallen off by playoffs. And like obviously you've got like a lot of DFM games coming in from like the Juggernaut match and then the lower bracket then into the finals. But there's like a lot of like false info in there, so I'd need to dig into that a bit more.
Sure. I had him do this quickly. It was mostly because I wanted to look at Korea and confirm my suspicions with numbers. But I was curious about the other regions too, so I asked.
Yeah. Well, that's like the whole thing about stats, is that you start with the eye check and you see if anything backs it up, and then if it doesn't, then oh well, whatever. Try again with another number.
That's right. You just bend reality to you bend stats to fit your reality. That's what I do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you have any before you go, Nymaera, do you have any predictions on the other group in play-ins?
Or an angle or something that people don't think of, because obviously everyone thinks it's just Anwar and LNG like have to get out and no one else has a chance in a way, you know.
I reckon HLE drop a stupid game and they end up third, so DFM are going at second and we have to play against them in a best of 5. It's going to happen. I think that HLE are going to drop a stupid best of 1. One team always has it in a play-ins. It's just like almost just through laws of averages. One team's going to have it. I just think it's going to be HLE this time. I think there are some decent top lanes hanging around.
Hear me out. Cloud9 gets second place in Group B, and then Hanwha's third, and then Hanwha and Cloud9, I get the match I want. So
there we go. Cool. Well, I'll hope for that as well. We'll see you on the other side.
All right. Thanks, man, for joining us and giving the insight. Very good. I'm actually really excited to watch. I'm probably more excited to watch play-ins this year than I have ever been before. Because
it's the best format we've had for play-ins. I know you guys talked about it on the pre-show thing, or like the intro thing. Like, this is the best play-ins to actually have interesting games. Particularly because when you've got like the 4 minor groups, you're gonna have like a lot of crap, means nothing games. This one actually, because it is so volatile, it's not great for competitive reasons, but it's good for like the upset potential. And obviously last year we had a couple of teams like completely fall apart. Hopefully we don't get that this year, because I think the format is about as good as this structure of tournament can get for that stage.
Good shit. Well, hopefully DetonatioN FocusMe makes it into the World's play-ins, and we'll just have you back next week, hopefully, for the preview episode for the main event.
See you then.
Thanks, Nyamera. We're going to take a break. We'll get Sheepy on in just a couple minutes. We're back with Sheepy. We talked to him before MSI, where he had a vintage performance, not getting out of his group behind
Beautiful.
Pentanet, the Australian team.
Pentanet GG. They're too strong. From a region that doesn't exist anymore, guys.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Can't wait for some high quality analysis.
He's running it back though at Worlds this time. He did replace a player, so I guess we should start there. You do have a new 80 carry compared to MSI on the roster. Why'd you guys make this change?
Quite a lot of reasons. Before that, they've been already playing for 2 years because they were initially in the same roster before the 4 other players that we had: Gadget, Santas, Nomans, Anna, and Boss. And that wasn't the Vega squad that qualified for the MSI before that, like 2 years before that. So since that point already, Gadget was kind of like a not easy person like to integrate into a team because he has a very weird champion pool, plays a lot of mages, plays like Twitch and Swain and stuff that got banned like all the time. Also one of his strengths for sure, but yeah, that was one of the reasons why the team decided together. And also the second one is that in practice, it was sometimes a little bit difficult to get like a good practice regime in, just because of the way that he was as a person. Yeah, he is very experimental, tries to do stuff, limit tests a lot. So yeah, now he's doing well in mouse sports, so I'm happy for him. But yeah, that was the change that we decided on together as a team.
There's also, I'll just throw this out there, and obviously we'll just be careful how we touch this hot potato. If people don't know, as far as I'm aware, I actually don't even know if he could have come to this event. Like, basically, his country is Belarus, and unfortunately, it's very limited as to where you can actually go in that country. They've got a very weird sort of political situation where people are closed off the border around them. So I actually, listen, that might be by the by, but I'm just saying that doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't anticipate that, but
No,
maybe that
of
was
course not.
just
Yeah.
like the luck on
you
our
got lucky,
side.
exactly, yes.
Yeah.
You dodged the bullet on that one. There you go.
Good old unicorns of love luck, you know, winning just the last game in a best of 5 to make it to the LEC or ULCS back in the day, and then somehow making it to this point. It's just the
Here's my main question,
luck.
Sheepy. You talked a good game before the last MSI, just like our last guest Nymaera did. The problem is this, mate. Some of the stuff he said actually happened. Your stuff remained, you know, a fantasy that would have been excellent, just didn't really manifest, you know.
Fucking damn it.
So here's the question.
You didn't ask me on the Worlds before that.
So here's the question. When I asked him, basically, because the LGL team has a bunch of Koreans, and actually I personally expect they'll probably do this the Korean thing. You just take the champions you're good on and you just hope you outperform the other guy, because that's kind of like the way Koreans play like legends. Your team at least has the history in your region, which is that in theory, there's also the sort of fuck it draft, which is just, you just throw a draft that they cannot possibly predict. Like they can't have any clue, though, which by the way, can work really well against teams that like to play standard. Like suddenly they don't know what that champion is, where it's going, etc. Will we see any of that from Unicorns of Love? Do you think is that a string to your bow?
I mean, that is definitely a strength. Strength to my boar, is that like a
string to your bow?
Okay, well, yeah, the boar is very strong in that regard. That we have like a lot of different
big
picks.
tusks on the board.
What is it? The big tusks, strong hoofs, or whatever it's called. So yeah, either way, like our boar is ready to go. One of our legs has been gone though. Has been gone missing with Gadget, and now we have Argo for that, so he's a little bit more of a standard player, I would say. But I mean, Nomans is still here, who played Kassadin, just smurfed on that in the Worlds before that, so I think he will do well. And let's see, he has also a lot of tough matchups. I think our group is very close to each other, so there will be some mid laners he has to face, but yeah, there's still Unicorn magic always in every Unicorn lineup.
So you must be happy with the group that you got, right? Like you dodged potentially Hanwha and LNG. This is looking like a group you could possibly win and just go straight to the group stage of Worlds, right? What was your reaction to finding out about this group, and which teams are you most concerned about?
Yeah, well, there's two reactions. There was the reaction from my team, and then there was my reaction. So my reaction obviously is I want to be first two places so that we can actually go on and, you know, go to the next stage. However, the other two teams that they drafted were extremely, I mean, not extremely weak, but they were weaker than the two others that we got. So the thought process from my team was like, we are generally pretty strong, like in just one best of 5 playing it out. Obviously, in best of ones with the unicorn factor, it happens too. But they feel very comfortable in best of 5 because we played, for example, against Mad Lions. Mad Lions Armut, I just wanted to say, but yeah, we played against Armut's team before, and we won against them 3-0, and who won before that against Splice 3-2. So we felt very, very comfortable in best of 5s, generally speaking. And we could only show that one time last year, so that kind of sucked. But hopefully, we get out of groups and can show it more. But let's get into groups first. So yeah, my reaction was, okay, the first 2 teams that we got there and the other 2 teams are quite on our level, or like we can have really good chances to make it out of there. So we just reach for first or second place and just go from there. And the team's reaction was, well, it can be difficult because it's best of 1. So if we like miss a pick and every team is just so different, and like I don't know, they prepare something in secret, like they do the unicorn to us, then it can be a little bit difficult, and they would rather play in the first group where at least they are kind of secured 3rd place, and then they can play a best of 5 and show their worth. Because it kind of, like, honestly speaking, it kind of sucks to lose like 2 or 3 best of 1s. Like, I don't know, something surprising is happening and you're just instantly out of the tournament that you've prepared for like the entire year.
But at least only the last team is actually eliminated, so your odds of playing a best of 5 at some point in time are pretty good.
Yeah, that's true as well. So yeah, but they feel stronger, like just finishing 3rd place than choosing, like playing against another team in the best of 5 and then just going from there.
When I was having a look at like the champion pools of the players, I noticed a lot of it's quite similar. I mean, there's been a pretty wide champion pool, therefore, there's not as much craziness. But there's one that did stand out to me here, Sheepy, which is Anasic is playing Rek'Sai, right? It's 2021. That isn't a pick, as far as I can tell.
At least he didn't go the self-made route where he buys Infinity Edge 2nd item or something.
Okay,
like this.
true.
So
How is he playing? How and why is he playing that in season 11?
Well, so the thing is that it's like finest matchup against Lee Sin, and you used to play that a lot of games, so he knows the matchup well. And then it's kind of like if the enemy doesn't know how to play against it, it just works out well. It's kind of strong for the early games. You got the Prowler's Claw, which is very strong. Every other lethality item kind of got, he got nerfed as well that you can't jump on minions, but it's very strong jumping on enemies. You see it sometimes even, I don't think it will be built, but even on Draven, just for the extra stats. And so you just build those two that item, then you go like Edge of Night or Guardian Angel, and then at this point the game is over anyway when you have 2 or 3 items on like champions like that. So either you did your worth at this point or you lost. So that was the idea of Rek'Sai. I don't think it's like the best pick or anything like this, because now Lee Sin and Zhao exist and people started playing them properly.
It's out there though, because like I say, I looked at all the regions and I couldn't find anyone playing this thing.
That is true. However, that's just Anna, he likes to play those shows.
But Thorin, I've seen some of the junglers playing Rek'Sai occasionally in solo queue heading into Worlds right now. So I don't think it's going to be a huge pick, but it might still be a niche pick. And like with talking about the Lee Sin matchup, the reason why it was always played into Lee Sin is because you could interrupt the second Q proc by popping out of the ground,
right?
And getting the knock up, so he can't actually get the second Q damage, and he's right next to you where he can fuck him up. So that was the historical kind of counter matchup.
Yeah, but now the point is that at least Rek'Sai had some damage on the Lee Sin because he went the AD item and didn't get any HP. But nowadays, you have items like Gore Drinker, Steel Caps, and Starox, and at this point, and then he goes Conqueror, and at this point, like, you deal like 400, 600 damage or something like this, and then Lee Sin is just, blind rage all the way.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, like, the jungle meta developing this year, because it's like, okay, so they nerf Stridebreaker, and now people are actually just figuring out that the Steel Caps, Gore Drinker, and Sterix combo provides you both incredible offensive capabilities and then also incredible survivability. And it's now just dominant. Like, as we're seeing all of these like assassin junglers coming into play right now. We were talking a little bit about this earlier, but I mean, looking at what some of these players are playing, it's like okay, we see a lot of the junglers we saw at the end of the season, but now Qiyana has been changed. Now we're seeing Kha'Zix come into play. Now we're seeing Talon, Zed. Like all of these picks are starting to appear in the jungle. And then we're also seeing now that Lilia has been buffed again, and even a little bit of Talia now is coming back. So what is your give me the meta heat check right now, because you're our spy into the scrim environment that is currently
God damn
in
it.
Europe. So do you have any like, are these the same picks? I obviously you don't want to reveal your strategies, but I assume these are the same picks that are appearing in scrims as well.
I mean, yeah, where we have to really make a difference between like scrims and the actual things that will be played on stage. Because on scrims,
Sure.
you will always go for like the more experimental stuff, and then on
Sure.
stage, you just like take the very best out of the top. Yeah. So honestly speaking, rundown from like the champions that are for sure going to be like popping up and are like strong. It's like for top lane, it's Camille 100%, and then Ken and Jace, just because strong champions, a 1 AP champion at least in it. And then after that, you depends what kind of level you are from for a player. Like you can go for the Fioras. Maybe some Renekton will be played, but it will be more difficult. But yeah, those three, Camille, Jace, and Cannon, are definitely pretty good. And then for jungle, Xin Lee Sin are just super unstoppable, I think, overall as champions. But you can play everything. So there's like the Qiyana flex, the Z flex, Echo flex, even though it might not be played much. Jarvan being able to be played because it got buffed as well. Yeah, I mean you can play just so much in jungle right now. That's it's such an overwhelming role, honestly. Lilia being able to be played, but because Misfortune is getting buffed, maybe we see some Lilia and Misfortune combos that was being played before, especially because her ultimate got buffed. So now Lilia level 6 plus the Misfortune level 6 just deals so much more, like so much damage. So maybe we'll see that, but it really depends on like. I think it really depends on what the teams favor and then want to play around, and then what's their identity as a team and against what team they are playing. So if you're like a team fighting team, you can go for like the Azir or on top lane, like just kind of this Sign has been buffed as well. Like so many, trying to evening out the playing field. But if you're this kind of team fighting team and you really want to play it towards that edge because you know exactly how to play that, you can look for those Aphelios, top lane tank, play something in jungle and mid lane that just has like control mages or something just to stay alive. Because then there's the other side, which are like, I honestly think it's mostly Asian teams that can pull that off consistently. Just pick Zed, Qiyana, something like this, snowball the early game or like starting level 6, try to win from there. And honestly speaking, just if one player, like one of your carries, is not strong enough like to survive in that environment, you will just get bodied. So yeah, that's really difficult. For mid lane, I think, I don't know, Ryze, Orianna, like good control mages. Then you have like Twisted Fate, which I think is on the play, but Niski, I mean, we'll probably have it banned every time against him, and maybe perks or something like this. But yeah, those kind of champions are always good. There's way more to be played in mid lane as well, right? Maybe some Jace flex, maybe some flexes overall. Depends again on what team we're talking about, because whatever they prefer, you can play. There's like Galio being able to be flexed and like that kind of stuff. Like stuff from top lane can be flexed into mid lane as well.
Renekton or something, yeah.
For sure. Right, or even just to win the draft, you can like put your top lane Cannon or Camilla or whatever, just put it into mid lane and then see what you go for top lane, because the champions inherently just scale so well and like are doing so well mechanically that it's just, once you have them in your team and they are not getting behind like 20, 30, 40 CS or something like this, they will just be such a powerhouse on one or two items. You will always reach that. And then you go into bot lane and then you have again everything like AP champions are super playable right now. So that could be a thing.
Isn't support Amumu coming up a little bit as well?
And that's Rakana Mumu for bot lane is like very strong. But there's other champions as well. Like if you're playing aggressively, Alistar, Leona, or something like this, like you can play those champions still if you need a tank in your team comp, especially if you play something, I don't know, like Nidalee Leona or something like this, because so like I'm saying, like it depends a bit on what your identity is, what your players understand how to carry, especially in the like first 15 minutes, and then know exactly how to play the team fight and like the team fights that will come for the fourth Drang or for the Nashor. like as long as they don't understand those two aspects, like how to get through early laning phase and then fight around objectives like Rift Tower or Dragon, like that's the entire game. So yeah, just pick champions that are good at that, and then make sure that your team fighting is clean. And then because I don't think we'll see that much of a split pushing outside of being able like split push, then to get an angle or a flank or vision to then team fight better.
So I'm gonna ask you a theoretical question or a more abstract question right now, Sheepy. Are you ready? Because I don't want you to give away any information, but I need some scrim bucks, okay? And you are my scrim bucks ATM. You are Sheepy the ATM, okay? I need to make withdrawals of scrim bucks.
Yeah.
There are 1,000 scrim bucks in the Sheepy ATM. Which team is getting which amount of scrim bucks? So you have 1,000 scrim bucks to give me, and you have to distribute them between the teams.
Can I distribute it on the main event groups or just on the play-in groups?
You can distribute them however you want.
I mean, for sure, I would give them to the LPL teams like RNG, EDG. You know, like being super dominant. I think LNG is fine as well. FPX is strong. So I mean, they can fight.
Is there anyone surprising? Like, is there anyone that you wouldn't expect are actually doing way better than we anticipate?
I mean, the thing is, probably we will also go over the play-ins groups a little bit.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys want to go through them like
no, I want you to answer my question.
Yeah.
Okay. Overall, I have to say that the play-ins...
1,000 scrim bucks. Distribute them.
Okay, so I will give half of my scrim bucks already all to the LPL teams.
No, team by team. Okay,
Team by team.
all right. So 500 are going to LPL teams. Now, of those 500,
who's the
how are you
strongest?
distributing them?
Yeah.
That is a really, really good question.
I'll write this down for you.
I mean,
stylistically, they're so different. Yeah.
The easiest answer would obviously just rank by ranking, but yeah. So
yeah, but that's the entire debate there, isn't it? Because a lot of people still feel like even though EDG won the split, like spiritually, FPX was supposed to be the best team in the world, weren't they?
Yes, and that is it's really difficult because Worlds is also always a different monster. I think that I mean, EDG is just such a stable, strong team, but the FPX I feel like is a little bit more crazy, and it can really like with all the meta changes and so on, like it can help. So it's really difficult to say. I would say they are for different reasons, like both extremely good. I would probably still put my money on EDG just because consistency is key. But like I feel always there's one or two teams that are just surprising everybody and just getting super far, like Sunning and so on, like way far. I mean, like people expected them to be so strong, but like it was really close. So,
Sheepy, you're really bad at ATM. Can you give me some money, please? This is taking forever. You have 500 on the LPL team. So how are you distributing your scrim bucks?
Okay, LNG, I would give 50.
Okay.
I'm sorry, LNG. They're good, but they're not.
Bucks?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
And then I would say I would give EDG 200. I would say. I would give FPX 150.
All right. So you have 100 left.
100 left. So I just give the 100 back to RNG.
RNG, yeah.
Very good.
And I mean, it sounds like kind of like the seats are going, but I think since I don't have much more information, like insight-wise, like compared to Worlds last year, or because we just didn't have many scrims, I mean, against those teams, mainly also because they arrived quite late and they have an internal structure of who they're scrimming. Like scrimming Asian teams is very difficult in general, unless you're first place ULCS team or something like that, like LEC team or something like this. Like it gets difficult, or you have all the context, which I'm having, but I'm playing, with first place LCL team, so it's like it's a different, they wouldn't give us that many scrim bucks if you know what I'm saying.
Right, here's the thing. Now, this is what we need, though. Really, right? Listen, some people were interested in the LPL part, but really what people want to know is this. I'll just verbalize it. People want to know, like, for example, is Rogue, because everyone's just out on them because they played in the playoffs in EU, is Rogue, like, actually really good in scrims or something? You know, like, our team's, like, it's Mad Lions maybe overrated. What do you think on that angle? Yeah.
You still have 500 scrim bucks. Does Rogue get any
so who
scrim
you
bucks?
It to? Does any NA team get some? You see what I mean? Who's getting the last of the scrim bucks? How are you going to distribute them?
That's a good question. I think overall, okay, I think that Fnatic overall is super strong. But yeah, I mean, all of the LPL teams are strong. Damwon will definitely get like 200 scrim bucks. I mean,
so same as EDG.
Yeah, Damwon is so strong. I mean, Showmaker is such a good player. Like, it's really, really, really insane. And I mean, that's why he got like the main seed, main role in the trailer as well. But yeah,
exactly.
I'm super.
You have 300 scrim bucks left.
All right, for all of the rest of the teams.
Yeah.
So I think just 200. Damn it. Yeah, I don't have that much hope for NA. So I think 100 Thieves is fine. But I think after that it drops off a bit. TL, I mean, fine as well, but I'm not expecting too much, and I wouldn't give any to Cloud9. Like, nothing against Cloud9, but I don't have so many scrim bucks.
They keep tweeting that they like make EU like rage quit scrims. Like, they've been bigging themselves up on Twitter. I know you haven't.
I mean, probably that's just internet problems or something like this. but I'm not sure about rage.
To be honest, they make me rage quit fucking streams when I'm doing watch parties to watch them. Like,
see, so how much
it can be interpreted many ways? Exactly, can be interpreted many ways.
No scrim bucks for Cloud9. You don't sound convinced. How about Mad Lions? They look like a great team.
Yeah, I don't know about their. I should really ask like underhanded a little bit more questions, but I think I'm just too nice of a guy for that, or not underhanded enough. But I think Mad Lions, historically speaking, is one of the most consistent organizations. I don't know how they will fare with the meta overall right now, because I think it's extremely snowball intensive, and I honestly think that was not the best preparation for that, because I think a lot of the teams had like some difficulties like working stuff out. I mean, for example, Fnatic, who did a change from like top lane towards jungle, was the most consistent team just because they had like a really I mean, after all of the changes, just a very good team cohesion. People liked each other, worked on the same stuff. So Fnatic looked very strong. And Rogue, just because they had no changes and were like super consistent as well. Like, I feel like just consistency was key, and like even how strong as a team you are. Like, some of the organizations just fell apart. Like it was whoever like just was the most a team, like from the teams. So yeah, I think that the EU doesn't get many scrim bucks either. I would give them like 80 or something like this.
I noticed you haven't rushed to put a T1 in there, or like you haven't really been, didn't fly up to the G's.
Okay, I don't know. Like, I think T1 gets for sure some scrim bucks. I think they're really good. I'm super excited, obviously, for T1. Personal reasons.
You still have 300 scrim bucks left.
I've got a quick hypothetical question.
Yes,
again, hypothetical.
Who has to do LCK if I
Here's a question. Hypothetical, because you would obviously never reveal private information. You respect Koreans very much. Hypothetically, if I was basically ready to cheer for an AD carry for T1, would I be cheering for Teddy with the classic consistent game, or would I cheer for Gomiyushi with the mechanics? What do you think I should be getting ready for?
I mean, I don't know, so I can say that honestly speaking.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Do you have a suspicion of who will play then?
I think
they'll run Gomiyushi. That's what I think.
Yeah, I almost feel like that could be a thing, just because there's so much playable on the bot side. And honestly speaking, like, they got the top lane quite hard, and overall the nerfs and so on. So like, there's some still champions that are very strong, and like other new champions being tried out, like Aatrox and so on and so forth. But like, overall speaking, bot lane is super strong. So yeah, I feel like you maybe need like more of an explosive player. And yeah, I mean, Teddy is very consistent. Like, honestly, if I could choose, like, if I have the decision between Teddy and Gomiyushi, it's like, yeah, I probably would start with one, and then if I see that it's like not working out, I would go over to Teddy. But I like again, I have like zero insight exactly on how their scrim behavior is. T1 overall has always been very secretive about what they are doing. Yeah.
Well, this is a fun Russian nesting doll of hypothetical questions. But to return to your 300 scrim bucks that you have
Who does the last go to?
you still have
Yeah.
300, so you have to give it to people.
Yeah, they will go. I mean, 200 from them will definitely go to the LCK. I think.
You mean 200 more? Because Damon already has 200. Okay.
Yeah. So I think.
So you have Genji, Hanwha Life, and T1.
Hanwha Life gets 50.
Wow, really?
All the money expected?
Because I mean, what I like about play-ins is that the teams that are participating there have like some time to actually play on official stage, and I feel like sometimes Asian teams can be a little bit slow, so it's like kind of an advantage. Obviously, there's a skill difference as well, but I always feel like it's a little bit, historically speaking, can be a little bit flippy. So yeah, I think they get 50. I think. Oh wait, I have only 200 more to give, right?
You have 300 in total, but you just gave 200 to all of the remaining 3 LCK teams, which leaves you 100 scrim bucks for everyone else who's not Chinese or Korean.
That will. That's maybe a little bit.
Who's the one team you pump it for?
I think.
Or 2. You could get 2 obviously from that if you want.
Yeah, I think Genji will do well. I don't know about T1. I hope they do well, but I just don't know. So yeah, it's kind of like how the seeding. I mean, I watched all of the playoff games as well, and I overall feel that the playoffs kind of representing what they're doing. I'm the only thing why I'm like struggling a bit is just because of all of the changes that has been happening on the map, especially in jungle, and I feel that can kind of mix up a little bit. Like the people that have the most versatile like mid lane jungle duo, or like the team that can adapt the most, is like going to be able to step up. So there are like some surprises that possible here. That's why I think that overall the LPL teams will perform a little bit better than the LCK teams, because LCK teams, I feel, have always tended to play a little bit more structured, where it can be very difficult, and especially nowadays everything one shots everyone. So yeah, I think like the highest chances. I mean, just to give my points away like this, because I think per team it's like a little bit difficult, since I also don't have so many insights into all of the scrim behaviors, especially from Asian teams. But yeah, I think that most likely LPL teams will do extremely well. I think for EU teams it will be difficult, and I think Fnatic is probably, with the practice that they're having, in a pretty good spot. I feel them good. I think. I mean, Rogue honestly will show in the first games, but might be a little bit difficult. I think Mad Lions. I don't know. I think it might be difficult too. Maybe that's like a little bit of a. Maybe it's a personal take, but yeah, I like the organization, all of them, but I think it might be difficult for them.
So
For NA, I think it will be extremely difficult. I watched the NA finals and all of the playoffs, and like, 100 Thieves looks fine, but it looks afterwards really difficult.
Right, by the way, in your group, I thought this is an interesting angle. Obviously, one of the teams that people will underestimate is Galatasaray, the TCL team. During this season, do you actually scrim with them? Are they a team that's a scrim partner?
I think we scrimmed against them like once or twice. They've been super dominant, right? Like in summer they went like 21-4, something like this, and like no, they went 21-4 overall with playoffs together, and they went 15-3 in summer. So they had like a super dominant game, and and
maybe underrated. Then you think they actually have a chance?
I honestly think that it's like Galatasaray and Detonation FocusMe like seem super strong, like probably from the region, like from the JP and TR, like from Japan and Turkey. It's like the 2 strongest teams that coming out from there. So that's why I mean we will face Galatasaray on like the first day, and DFM as well. So it will be super fucking tough. first day for
I
us.
feel like, dude, the thing is, when everyone saw this group, right, I've no doubt seen Iron fans who don't watch any other minor region. Obviously, we're just going like, yay, we missed like the LPL. That's it. But it's like, dude, this whole group is fucking, it's teams that can, it's like in English, you say it's like a banana skin. It's like, there's so many games that if on paper you think they're won, like Cloud9 can lose some of these games for sure.
For sure.
Yeah,
For
I feel
sure.
I feel like the result of this group for Cloud9 might be the Loco Reggie video that we saw earlier, where it's that initial moment of joy, but when you actually get into the group, that could turn to horror pretty fast here.
Yeah. So I honestly think this group is super tough for everybody. Galatasaray looked super dominant in their own region. Play mid jungle centric, which I think can be difficult for Cloud9 because they are very flippy. The people that have to carry in Cloud9 are like Perks and Sven, and if they don't carry, the team just falls apart. So either they're like overshooting or they just don't do anything. And yeah, so I feel like that is a little bit shaky. Galatasaray looked, like I said, domestically they're super strong. Same for Detonation FocusMe. Like they were really strong. Again, very strong mid lane jungle duo. Galatasaray.
We talked with Nyamera about that's been Cloud9's biggest weakness has been mid jungle synergy.
Yeah,
throughout this
and I
whole
think,
year.
Yeah, because I think it's kind of weird that Blabber Perks, like generally speaking, the way it should be working is that you should always mention like jungle, mid lane duo, like they should be like one unit, you know? Like it should always be talked about this, but it's like I feel like Perks is his own person, like with all of his own personality, blah blah blah, and like Blabber is like getting shit for so much stuff as well, and like it's his own person. And generally speaking, you always like in Rogue, you want them to be together, you know? So I feel like that's the way it should be talking. And the way Cloud9 functions, it's like it's really about Sven and Perks. Like some of the games, they go, I don't know, they just, I don't know, they do really random stuff. I mean, for example, Perks in last game, like last team fight, TPs into the middle of everything. Spence walks back, then Camille assassinates the Orianna when she still has flash and all this kind of stuff. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not. I mean, unless something is surprising, but like the thing is, I would like to cheer for those teams like Cloud9 and so on. But let's face it, we're not here at like I don't know, what was it? The Rift Rivals or something like this. Like we're at Worlds, so thing against LPL LCK team, it will be almost impossible to win against them. Like realistically speaking, I think, yeah. That's what I'm thinking. So yeah, and that now getting out of this group, I think it will be difficult as well. Because you have only one best of like you have the best of ones and like against each and every team, and the teams are not that weak. So yeah, I think that's kind of the idea. And then you also have Beyond Gaming, who bought the AHQ spot, right? And I think yeah, the only team that they lost the games to in the playoffs was against PSG, who's now the first seeded, and I think PSG everybody's rating very very high. So yeah, and before that, they won against PSG 3-2, and then they lost in the finals against them 2-3. So like
Yeah,
Beyond Gaming itself should be super strong as well. So you have like Galatasaray, who is like one of the most dominant splits like from any Turkish teams. Then you have DetonatioN FocusMe is looking extremely strong as well. And yeah, like they just 3-0 the final, like nothing given. And then like you have Beyond Gaming as well, who is almost as good as PSG, I would say. So yeah, and then you have obviously us as well for Cloud9. So I think it's super tough group for anybody to get out of here.
Since you've been doing your research on the teams in your group, is there a player that most people might not know about that's in your group that you think deserves a lot of hype or that has really impressed you as a coach?
Yeah, I think Doggo from Beyond Gaming has been doing really well. He was having like the first. Okay, he's the player that also went from AHQ before that. Like I think he's the only player that went from AHQ over to Beyond Gaming, and he's been performing really well. And the spring split, I think he had like I don't know. I'm not sure if I wrote that down somewhere, but like he had like a normal KD, and then like the in summer split he was, or in playoffs he was stepping up like way more. I think his DPS also went down, like DPS share by like 3 or 4% just in playoffs, and he's been playing very consistently. And same for Husha, the jungler, played also very strong on games like Viego or something like this. Yeah, doing a lot of work. So yeah, but I think the one that stuck out the most for me, like researching their team, was like Doggo. I think yeah, he's really well. Like we said, like they went 3-2 and 2-3 against PSG. So yeah, I think this team is something to look out for. Yeah, outside of this, is there
I've
anything?
got an angle I want to ask you, because there's an obvious one that everyone's going to forget that I'd be remiss not to ask. Your boy Vizicsacsi is fucking playing in this
Yep.
Australian
And
team.
he's gaming, right?
What do
Let's
you
go,
think?
Chachi. Well, actually, against Chachi, we scrim.
Poppy and fucking Cho'Gath might be in the meta. Like, this is ridiculous, too. The script writers have gone wild on this one, haven't they?
It is true. I can't say so much that Chachi has evolved beyond Cho'Gath and Poppy. I know I'm leaking information here, so he can play more than 2 champions. But yeah, I mean, he didn't play, and then he just comes back. He's consistently performing well in solo queue. I think he is also like, I mean, people know him. He's such a lovable character. Now, is he good? Is he actually really good? I would say that Chachi just needs a little bit more time, because the meta is so different from when he stepped out. You know, like back in the day when he stepped out, it was like you can play Poppy, like everything is slow, people shake hands, you know, the junglers fight each other, and then it's like, okay, it doesn't matter, walk away. Top lane, 2 tanks just farming minion waves, you know, and then saying goodbye, and then just looking at the TP button, which you could cancel at that time.
Yes.
So yeah, it was a very chill day. Like as a top laner, you could join your team, but it's not like if you decided to do so, you had to stick to it. It could also be like, that fight is lost, peace out. So yeah, I think it's a different area. I think Chachi needs some time to get used to that, because it's more aggressive, and like champions, Camille, like Jace, you just need a lot of practice on them, like Irelia, flex picks, like that kind of stuff. Maybe
Dude, I wanted to get your take on it, because obviously you were working with him in the UOL days, like, know the guy. Dude, when I did a Reflections interview with him recently on my channel, I was very shocked, because I actually thought, not knowing him, just watching his career, I thought he was kind of like Odoam there, where it's like he actually like embraces the idea of like, yeah, I'm going to be the weak side top laner, but the idea is, I'm going to be so good at like not losing. Dude, he actually in this interview, no joke, the main theme is he has real serious regret that he didn't just speak up more and be like, I want to get the carry pick, I want the fucking jungler to. He actually feels like he kind of never got to like fully flex his career out in that sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that mechanically and intellectually speaking, and I mean intellectually speaking, using that in League of Legends feels like wrong, but like Chachi,
Well, this guy actually plays chess, so to be fair, I'll give it to him. He might be smart,
and studied psychology as well, which he stopped or like paused for actually. Then he studied German and like learned that in like speed, like just speed running German. So I don't know, like Chachi is one of the smartest persons I know, like people I know, like just insanely smart. So yeah, I think he just literally needs more time, because you just have like all those crazy people running around in solo queue, like one tricking a champion on top lane, and then top lane, mid lane is tough, but like if you lose your lane, you just start roaming. Bot lane, same stuff. You just start roaming, swapping lanes.
Now, right?
Flip it. Top lane is just like you die once, like that game is lost, and you play against, I don't know, like top lane Camille with Ignite or something like this, and you lose 3 waves and it's still pushing towards the enemy, like you can just give up the game. So yeah, props to Chachi going back towards top lane. I think from scrims as well, we saw that he can play like more aggressive champions too. And I'm rooting for him, but
he's still playing Poppy in solo queue on his Worlds account, because I'm looking at it right
now.
That
could be
I am sure people will ban Poppy, and I'm sure if it's open, he will play it. Like I'm sure, 100%. Like really, like no joke.
So he has been playing some Poppy, some Rumble, looks like some Tryndamere, Gwen.
Gwen. Interesting.
Camille, Aurelia.
Yeah, some Gwen has been. I mean, a lot of people had like good Gwen performance. I think like, yeah. I mean, Gwen. So the problem with Gwen is that, I mean, she received some nerf, especially the E attack speed nerf, like 20% down, which like is insane level 1. But she got 40% attack speed on E level 1. Like what champion does like gets that? Like generally you get like increments of 5 attack speed per level on a spell or something like this. But yeah, her E and then obviously Tristana Q are like the strongest attack speed steroids. And yeah, she got gutted there a little bit. Problem is also that there's a lot of champions in top lane viable that are good into Gwen, like Jace, for example, is very strong. And I think Cannon was good into it too, even though Cannon got a small buff, small nerf. Camille used to be fine into her as well with Ignite, so it's just I think the meta doesn't fit her so well. But like in second rotation, if it fits and you need an AP top lane and you don't want to have something like an just I don't know AFK champion like Ornn. I don't know what I mean. Ornn has been said too much because probably we'll see more aggressive champions. But yeah, I mean it's an option. But I wouldn't bet on it. Like I think the other 3 champions are like more what the draft will center around.
As a coach, how confusing is it right now coming into this meta without having seen any professional games on this patch? And also because just from our conversation, it sounds like, if you look at the solo queue and what people are playing, there's all of these flex picks right now. It really does seem like very disruptive in terms of what has changed since the end of the summer split. And especially when you're looking at best of ones, where it's like you can't know for sure and be absolutely sure what is strong. So if you let one of those picks through and it turns out to be super OP, and you may have misjudged the power level, it could just wreck your best of one right there. So how are you adjusting for this, and what's your mindset in these scenarios? Because it seems really hard.
Yeah, we had the problem last Worlds as well, where like jungle meta just changed so dramatically with like Morgana jungle, and before that, like Morgana jungle was just not a thing. It's like when we saw Misfortune support the first time, people were thinking that it was like mispick, like Morgana jungle. And then when the changes were made, people were like, yeah, okay, Morgana jungle. And then it started becoming super meta and like Rumble jungle as well. So we don't want to make the same mistake where we are like Lee Sin flex pick on lane, where it's like Lee Sin just goes through the entire map once. So yeah, I think that we don't want to make the same mistake. It's very, very difficult to know what you want to play. And I think, or like what is strong or like OP. But I think like the most important thing is just you understand what you are good at and what you understand how to snowball with. Like I've seen massive differences between people playing Talon just because they think it's strong and then it just sucks, or like Zed, and then actually playing just this stable champion that is strong like Lee Sin and Zhao. You just don't go with the flow and like you just play to the strength of that champion. And yeah, like I think generally speaking, unless you're very good at adapting and you can just I don't know, play those champions like with ease and understand exactly what's so OP on them and like create those situations that they're OP in, then yeah, I think it's better to just play your solid champions and go from there.
So what are your expectations? Because you were talking about how strong a lot of the other teams within your group are, and yeah, it does seem like it's up for grabs in a lot of ways. So, what are your expectations for the play-in stage for Unicorns Above?
It will be difficult. I think that the good thing is that we kept our top side intact, and especially I think in top lane we have an advantage compared to the other teams, because I feel that the other teams don't have such strong top laners or not playing top lane centric. They're playing more bot lane centric. Like I don't know, Liang from Beyond Gaming or Fudge. I don't know. Like I think Fudge has maybe strong performance on Gwen like one time, but yeah, I don't remember like much Fudge, carrying or something like this. So like from my side, I feel like Boss has a huge advantage towards other players. And yeah, and I think Normans is somebody who can just get like a crazy counter pick or something like this, and then we can carry through this because he's like, I think Normans is maybe a little bit like, I don't know, like perks or something, where it's like if he's doing well, we're doing really well as a team, but if he's not doing well, it gets very difficult. So yeah, and then I think the good addition about our bot lane is that we have Argo who plays very consistent and has also been playing like aggressive champions. Like I think in our region we played Nymaera and so on, which like I think not many other people played, but because he was really good on them, he could just carry with them. So it's nice to see that he stepped as well. So yeah, but I think that's the biggest advantage, and I think it might be very surprising to most of the people. So I see our chances quite good. But like what I'm so afraid of about this group is like I've not seen Galatasaray or Detonation meet like in difficult spots in their region, so it's like a little bit hard to say. And Beyond Gaming looked extremely strong, almost as strong as PSG. So yeah, and then LCS, I think either we win against them or like maybe some team in the future will. So yeah, I think it's super 50-50. I wish, like, obviously I'm biased So I would say we just take first place, easy peasy. But like the reality of things is that this group, like if you are rooting for your region, like you should tune in for sure, because like anybody can make it out of this. And I think we can have so many surprises. Like it would not surprise me if like DFM would just like pop off in this group or something like this. Like it was just not. So yeah, I mean, my expectation is just like in the next week of scrims that by God, hopefully we figure out exactly what is strong and then make a good draft. Because if you're going into the games and then you're like, I don't know, what does Kiana jungle do? And then they pick, I don't know, Kiana jungle and then just rip through you, like that's one game gone. And yeah, that's just unacceptable.
I wanted to ask also about just like how the boot camp is going and like what the conditions are for you guys there, because like you're like, oh, my internet's unstable, and I'm not here to like shit on the situation, but I am curious, like, what's your setup? Like, are you in a hotel and you have practice rooms that are provided by Riot? Is that how it's working?
Yeah, that's the setup, and we have to align with very strict coverage rules. There's like people that are checking constantly if we are doing everything correctly for that. So I feel safe about that, and hopefully soon the quarantine is ending. So at this point, we can like move more freely. And like I said, like in Iceland, there's no COVID, so it's just very nice going there. So once
you have
you're
to
done with
adhere
that,
to these like protocols for like the first 10 days or 2 weeks while you're there, and then
yeah,
it'll be
exactly.
cool and you guys can just all hang out with each other.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's cool. Like obviously the normal COVID stuff, like be careful, like don't sneeze in each other's faces or stuff like this, or like wear masks where you have to. But like overall, like once that it's done, like we can move around freely. So that will be really great, because I need to go to the Blue Lagoon. I don't know about the other players, but it's a very important step in the Worlds in Iceland. So that's one
What
of
is
the
that?
things.
I actually have no
I
idea what
assume
that
it's like a
is.
famous sight to see or something, isn't it?
I mean, last year, oh no, for MSI, I went to the volcano, which was still active at this point, and like everything smells here like I don't know how it's called
Sulfur.
in English. Yeah,
Oh, it's
sulfur,
a
exactly.
hot spring. I see.
And it's a
Right.
hot spring. And my God, is it a good hot spring? I've had friends going there already and telling me like,
Oh, it looks amazing.
yeah, it's absolutely amazing. So like once I did that, and then I don't know, when we qualified for group stage, we can have it again. Like
Is
discuss
there any
how
sort of like
amazing.
associated element? Like, is it supposed to heal you or anything? Is there anything like that? Any law behind it?
Yes,
Because
you
maybe
go
you go
there
in,
and you win. I heard Faker went there
there
before
you
he won
go.
Worlds 2 or
Maybe
3
you
times.
go in there, right? It levels you up completely.
Showmaker.
Next thing you know,
Yeah.
you're in LEC again.
It's true. It's working that easily.
There you go.
But
There you go.
why go to LEC if you can stay in the LCL?
I don't believe that's ever been a saying, but okay, we can start making one up. You don't
Is
maybe
this-
that'll be a thing.
Hey,
Yeah.
you guys are old. You both are like old like me. You remember Moscow 5, the
That's
most
true.
Of course, true.
feared team in the world, with Darian, who was like half normal, half like I don't know what he had, but like yeah, you
No
guys
one
remember.
knows. There was no cure for whatever he had, put it that way.
Yeah, that's true.
For good or for ill,
I'm
The old
actually
generation.
concerned because Perks is there, and this is like an actually massive hot tub that could fit, looks like thousands
go.
of people into it at one
Exactly.
time.
He could
It's true.
poach and also poach.
We're happy that G2 is not here. Let's say it like
100
that.
people at once, Monty. He could actually literally maneuver. This is how God to hear is. Instead of just his own team, he could maneuver all transfers around the world before
Exactly.
the off season. So everyone, all I'm saying is this: if you're Korean or like Chinese, stay the fuck away from that hot tub. Listen, you don't know what this guy can do.
Yeah. Maybe we dodged a bullet right there with like G2 not being there as well. Because like there could be some stuff like what's being discussed in the hot tub stays in the hot tub,
Exactly.
That's the rule. And Riot adheres to that as well. So it's like it's a dangerous place.
If Riot was smart and/or had a sense of humor, neither of these things are true. But if they were, they could actually use. What I would do is I would set up a separate Blue Lagoon stream and have the world's biggest
God.
hot tub stream with all of the pro players at Worlds in it at one time.
My lord. I think you should just copyright that idea and then just imagine the Faker hot tub stream. I mean the views.
Riot could take the Just Chatting channel and just destroy it completely, couldn't they? They could have like fucking 1 million views or something.
It's true. And then after 1 week, they just drop it.
Exactly.
My lord. Yeah, I think you guys are printing money here, but you need Riot to listen and then,
Exactly.
make them do it.
I think that would actually be hilarious if Riot did like set up a 3-hour Blue Lagoon hot tub stream.
I
where,
would
like,
join.
we
I would
invited all
stream. Hello,
It would be
Riot?
fun. It would be
Here?
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody
I
just
do
show up
all
to the
the
Blue
things.
Lagoon.
Man, if you get like free entry, or it's like, oh my god, just imagine that's the media day. Like they're sending us to media day. It's like you have to go to the Blue Lagoon and stream.
All the interviews are in the lagoon, the
Oh
hot
my
spring.
god, that's the biggest yes ever.
Genius.
Yeah, and people just take extra time. Like Faker, what do you think about your group? It's like, let me think. Drifting off.
For $100,000, Faker will write your name on his body.
Oh my god! Holy!
Some things
He could finance the entire.
In the
prize
modern day,
pool of
there would be
wealth.
some really fucking whacked out fan who probably would pay that.
Yeah,
Because it's
I mean,
Faker, dude. Like,
skip
you'll
all
never
the
get that
skins.
chance again. You'll never get that chance again. Yeah, exactly. Someone would pay it. Some like guy from like Dubai who's like a super millionaire. His kid would pay it, I guarantee.
Yeah, like 10 times or something like this. Just paint
Exactly.
Fake all over. Yeah. No, I think it's a good idea. I will see what context I have here for Riot and just make it happen. Okay.
It would be real, like objectively, it would be really fun. So I hope they do it.
Hilarious. So it would be great. If they
Like
don't
I
do
said,
it, then
Riot doesn't
we'll
have a
just
sense of
do like
humor, so
yeah. we'll do it. We'll just do it like we grab some players from here and there, make them sign the document that's like in Russian so they can't read it, and then send them in the bathtub.
All right. Well, thank you, Sheepy. We'll let you go. I know you have a lot of scrims and stuff, and probably preparation for your groups that are happening next week. Thanks a lot for taking an hour to come on the show and discuss all of this. Very interesting to hear your perspective, and I'm really looking forward to these play-ins. So
Yeah,
thanks.
Thank you a lot as well. I'm looking forward to both of the groups. I think play-ins has been never more interesting, honestly speaking. I don't know who will win or who will not win, but there's great storylines to be coming out of this, and then obviously they have to go into groups, which, like, I don't know, the groups look really tough. So whoever goes, for example, Rogue's group, like, good
Well,
luck.
Rogue's dead.
I mean, and plus one other buddy.
Yeah, some unfortunate. So maybe it'll be you. Can it be you? Actually, don't know if it can be you if you get.
I just don't wanna think about it. It's like the inevitability of death or something like this. You just like skip it. Just live your life as long as it's nice.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, thanks a lot as well for having me. Was a blast.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break and we'll be back with viewer questions when we return. All right, we're back with some viewer questions. There are quite a few that have been stacking up. Sorry for the lack of summoning insight. There were some extenuating circumstances. People are busy.
Luckily, we have pretty abstract questions. It's not like, is TSM going to win playoffs? Like obviously, that'd be out of date, wouldn't it? I think I would have guessed that one correctly.
All right, so we're going back in time right now for the Grog questions. A classic butt pounder 420 question: which is more useful, the CSPPA or a screen door on a submarine? Same level of usefulness at this point in time. CSPPA, they don't even have a leader anymore. I have no idea what's going on with them.
The thing is, in theory, a screen door has some built-in functionality and is much cheaper.
Fair enough. And isn't trying to bully people for money.
Exactly. Just stays there and does its job.
See, there's nothing insidious about a screen door on a submarine.
CSPPA should learn from the screen door. It's got a lot of qualities that they should adopt. It's in the background. It's not trying to be the star of the show. It offers a way in and out of things. There's a million angles we can go on this one.
All right. Envision a kid about to graduate.
Transparency. It's a screen door. It's got transparency there.
There you go. That's the one right there. That's it. Envision a kid about to graduate from college with nothing but a pile of debt. What advice would you give him if he wants to one day be an owner of an LCS team that has its sights on winning worlds? Well, by the time that kid could own an LCS team, I think League of Legends will probably no longer be a major esport. LCS is, not doing super hot in terms of viewership, and also will never really have a chance on winning Worlds. Like, I think what you could hope is that all minor regions don't count as imports everywhere, so that maybe you could get some more players in, and then maybe you have some kind of a shot at a world championship. But I just don't think that's likely.
It depends, obviously, what you did at university. You didn't really say that, right? So here's the angle that I would say. The easiest way in is probably, it's obviously not actually easy, would be basically to get into venture capital. And then if you're the guy who can raise the money, you could just say, and I get to be like a minor owner of the team. And then that'd be your step in, that's even real. Like, that's not impossible. Just you have to have some skills in finance, obviously.
Yep.
There's a lot worse people than you probably have made it through that method, put it that way. I think that's probably the best way. Or you could become a really good player like Bjergsen and then get a partial equity stake in a team. But I think it's really hard to start new esports orgs these days, just because the market's already oversaturated and everything, all the venture capital's already in. So I think that ship has sailed. Also, I have to say, I don't really know if he was really honest, if I injected him with the truth serum, if Bjergsen would say it was worth what he had to go through to get that. That's like some Andy Dufresne crawling through a pipe of shit level stuff, and just at the end you get 2% or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if it was worth it, but there's a lot of, put it this way, there's a lot of counterfactual universes in which Bjergsen's career is actually a lot better. I know fans of NA will think of that. There's ones where it's awesome, isn't it? Like, he stays in the EU, becomes one of the great players, maybe he doesn't adopt that weird playing style, he does some at Worlds. It's actually depressing now I start thinking about it. This was the darkest timeline. This was the Thanos fucking snap universe for Bjergsen.
And you know what? What's crazy is here's his opportunity to get the fuck out, and he just wants to stay in jail. He just wants to sit there forever.
The problem is, Monty, he's been conditioned and institutionalized. He wouldn't survive on the outside. He needs the rigidity of the warden, Reggie, coming in. He needs to be trapped by the jungler and the fans, the intense scrutiny of the people in the yard, shiv him. He wouldn't, if he came outside, he'd be guarding his fucking food and looking at people. And, he obviously bagging groceries in a bottom LEC team. He wouldn't survive 5 minutes, If you see what happens, he probably wouldn't make it like Red. He'd be like that other guy, which is a bit of a dark term. He'd carve his name Bjergsen, say, P.S. still love you, Richie. Can I come up? Jesus. TTS, social media manager, that's how you make a joke about suicide, but you get totally away with it and you make it actually work. You see how I did that? Also, you're not me. Shit, dunk, TSM dunk. I can't believe that's even real either. How's that even a real thing? TSM dunk. Get the fuck out of that. I know it's so mental, isn't it?
All right, since Riot has committed to constantly shuffling the meta and seems to do roughly a 180 every 12 months, could a team be effective in roster moves by just building a roster for whatever the opposite of the previous Worlds meta was?
Not a bad idea. That really isn't actually.
No. So
because you can't get rug pulled, they can't just fuck the whole meta right before your team goes live. Yeah.
So I think what we're actually seeing is that teams are now making more roster moves in mid-season after MSI, which seems to be, I think, the smarter way to do things. Is most teams would just commit to their roster for a year, but look how successful 100 Thieves was at getting Abadage in halfway through the year. And to me, it just seems
Fnatic as well.
Fnatic. You get a good enough team, right? And then you just have to build into your schedule. If you're a GM now, we're probably going to have to make some moves halfway through the season. And I think that's the smarter way to play this game.
Yeah, basically the mistake they made before was realistically you commit to your roster for a whole year. So even if spring is absolute shit, you just go, hope we make it, guys. Can you all just improve 20% each and the team collectively 50%? No, in that scenario, you should probably just do triage and go right, this guy's got to go. And then listen, let's gamble on this guy with the summer up. It's actually worth it. Especially because the thing about League, because the meta changes is, it's actually not really a game unless you're going to be the absolute great teams of all time. It's not a game where the core has to have massive experience. It's not like Counter-Strike where you keep 3 players for 4 years or whatever. In League, you can really just chop and change, and you could just go like Fnatic did all the way to the top almost.
Yeah. Okay, next question. What years do you think NA/EU across the board were strongest heading into Worlds? How about the weakest?
Easiest task for EU has to be Season 9, obviously. They could have won Worlds for real,
Yeah.
For real.
NA?
The problem is, in theory, it's probably like season 6, even though TSM failed, right? At the time they had C9 and TSM, they had some good teams then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they ever really had, like, strongest I know is relative, but like NA has never really had a shot at any point in time.
Really?
But I would say season 6 is probably a fair shout for NA in terms of expectations. Yeah, I mean,
that's about it.
Yeah, G2 could have won Worlds. That was definitely on the table.
Obviously, season 2 Moscow 5 CLG one. That's the other one, I think.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
One.
Moscow 5 was definitely like the favorite coming into that year, so that seems fair as well. What was the most meta-dependent league team you saw succeed this year? Ooh.
Let me think. See, I feel like, if I'm thinking of this, I feel like it might be EG.
Yeah.
That really boosted them when that
Yes,
meta came on, when Jizuke just played all the, and then bizarrely in the playoffs, they sort of just didn't draft like that. I still don't know why they did that.
I have no idea what happened to that team in the playoffs. I would love some behind-the-scenes information about what was going on there. Yeah, I think EG is definitely way up there.
Because the problem is, I don't feel like for this year, that easy a question. It's not like I said, because the champion pools were fairly wide at a lot of roles, it didn't really feel actually like teams just played one way in the same way you might in past years, you know.
Yeah, and I think there was enough versatility overall this year in terms of the meta that, you know, a lot of teams just kind of rolled with it or played kind of standard safe compositions. So yeah, I don't think there were any super meta dependent teams. What particular skill set / viewpoint would have never existed / took longer to develop if you had not experienced? It seems like an incomplete question.
Doesn't end there. If you had not experienced what? Exactly. The suspense. What?
If you had not experienced blank. It literally says if you had not experienced blank question.
Oh, right, I see. Fucking hell, that the way the question is phrased breaks my brain. I still don't really understand what the question is. So wait a minute. Like so we have to reverse engineer a thing that if you didn't experience was it the skill set would be different?
What particular skill set / viewpoint would have never existed / took longer to develop if you had not experienced blank?
If I have to go really deep on this one, I would maybe say something like from the top of my head and from doing an interview, when I did an interview with Mithy and I asked him about G2 and how they got really good in season 7 and they could even play internationally, it's something like he just sort of, I think it was when he said maybe when they were MSI and they were in scrims or something. It's something like he said basically like he sort of like figured out from the Asian teams how you played like tempo style at the time or whatever. And basically I think all the other EU and Western teams just copied from what G2 did. So I think actually there's probably an example of some. So maybe if like G2 hadn't experienced MSI, they wouldn't have made this change that actually made EU sort of like go up in parity. Something bizarre like that. That was a bit of a reach.
I think it's asking us personally about our own skill set and viewpoints.
Okay, there we go. I mean, going to Korea must have changed things for you, Monty. There's one.
Yeah, for sure.
If you took that gig for Riot or whatever, like I'm sure you're a totally different person.
Yeah, for sure. Also, just like from a career perspective, I mean, recently, like I'm doing a lot more hosting work these days. And so if I hadn't actually experienced being an analyst, I would have been like a much worse host, because I think the way that I've developed my hosting skill set is because I know more of the kind of questions to ask analysts, and I can also prevent analysts from giving me bullshit answers because I know all the tricks myself to like be wishy-washy. So I think like I have adapted to hosting more quickly in terms of like analyst desks for esports than I would have otherwise, because I was, I've done 15 years of doing that myself.
I've got a cheeky one. If I hadn't have experienced the consequences of flaming a country right before I went there, the day before, then actually I might not be the person I am now. Because if people don't know, one, that put me halfway out the door. So I might actually still just be working for big sites. I might be like fucking Theon, like, right, I get 1.5 years here, then let's hope another big media company. I might be that guy still just writing articles, right? And what people don't know is this. And this is what you got to do in life, by the way. This is a secret. Your worst failures, if you actually acknowledge them and you look at what they mean and what they imply about the way you live in your life, actually level you up the most, because it shows you, it pokes a hole in like your defenses and you see where you're weak. So what that actually showed me when I was in that scenario, this is what people don't know. I'd done one CS major before, because that was the second CSGO major. I'd done an event before, right? And then I'd done like a couple of small events before this major. But at the time, I wasn't doing like my banter style. I didn't really do that back then. What I did is, because there was actually, by the way, almost no other people on the desk. Like Analyst basically was invented copying you guys from League of Legends. We didn't used to have it in CS. It was just commentators. So you kind of just did straight analysis. You talk about the roster, you talk about what the team does strategically in the game, and you predict the win. There was no banter. So what happens was, because things were so shit for me politically in the scene because of the Katowice stuff, like I'm obviously never going to get hired by ESL. ESL runs most of the events. At the time, I didn't know I'd get hired by other events. It was actually an event called Gfinity in the UK that took a chance on me first, and then DreamHack kept hiring me. It just made me sort of think, look, if I'm never going to go on the ESL events, and they might have half the majors, and also people now think I'm a villain, they fucking hate me, I'll just lean into that. Let's just make that my shit. And basically I decided, like, I'm just unleashed now. And about a year later was when I just went absolutely mental, and all the clips everyone remembers from the class, like the baguette smash, obviously going later on with the shack burn, like, I probably wouldn't have gone that route necessarily, because I was trying initially to be what I was, the esports historian. I was trying to be like the professor of Counter-Strike, like, right, and here's what you might not know about this player's past. Like, I might have just been a different person. Listen, on shows, I might have developed it. I might have done it on Summoning Insight or something, but that's what people don't, because obviously in League of Legends, I thought, well, I'm not as expert about the games. I've got to add something like that humor or whatever. But I maybe wouldn't have been the same CSGO analyst, so that could have been a pretty big difference. Also, low-key, you notice how, just to make people really mad, I've sort of said it was a really good thing that whole thing happened to me. I'm never going back there. You can't get me now. You can't get me to it.
That's true.
There you go. Although
like
I did tell my Discord this the other day, just because fans of our show will appreciate this. One thing we tried to do when we launched Flashpoint, it's just it was so scuffed, the launch, and then people had a lot of ideas that never went anywhere. We wanted to go and have the announcement that we were going to go head-to-head with ESL. Obviously, you go to your enemy's fucking home base. We were going to go to Katowice and go to that salt mine and do the press conference from there. Because, by the way, think of the genius of that. Thorin finally comes to Poland again in a salt mine, announcing a war on ESL. Like, that is everything about that is just fucking amazing.
That was a serious conversation that we had too, whether we should do like the press conference there. That would have been
the shit, wouldn't it?
It would have been great.
Been worth it just for the experience of that. I'll tell you that right
now. Let's move on. With the new summer formats for LEC/LCS shying away from championship points, would it be the time to suggest an international circuit for spring, even if it were run by Riot themselves, as they'd rather piss on the faces of TOs instead of throwing a bone? I mean, I would love to see that, obviously. Like, I would love to see more international tournaments in the spring instead of having another domestic, like, split.
Especially because, to me, like, EU was still just normal. You just had a split. I thought the NA one was ass, because what was sad was it just made it so like, I can afford to just throw like 3 games where I'm in third, or like, what? Whose idea was this? You managed to make the games less valuable. What? Like, I thought like, again, Riot's problem is this. I think I've cracked it years ago. They use single factor analysis. They just change one thing, like, well, because they do it in the game as well. They go, I'm just going to tweak this one thing here, and what are you talking about? A butterfly effect? There's no butterflies involved, you dickhead, right? Anyway, I'll just leave that one little thing there, and that's probably all that it'll change, and then everything changes, and then it's like the opposite of what they wanted, and it like, what? Yeah, and then Freak just figures out a way mentally to go, but maybe this is a good thing that it's bad. Yo, did you see the mad tweet? Speaking of which, just a tangent, dude. Freak amazingly has been getting more out of pocket, dude, on Twitter. He had one of the most mental tweets I've seen, where like Azael, I'm pretty sure it was Azael, just said something like, oh, you know, I've been in like almost half of like the something or other, right? And then even though he said the word almost, keyword almost, like that's a word that attenuates what comes after it, by the way, Freak. Freak just goes like, that's actually not true, because like 16 out of 33 is not actually half. Oh, he said something that I've been in league or esports half my life. And Freak goes, that's not even true. Like 16 out of 32, that's like 33, that's actually not half. And it's like, did I miss something? Did you go schizo or something? What the fuck are you talking about? Why are you correcting him like that in a really weird way? Like, just, and it's like a guy you work with. Like, what? Like, because the problem with Freak at this point is, and I'm no one to talk here, but as a result, I will, is Freak, you don't come off on Twitter the way you think you do, bro. You think it's like on the broadcast. None of whatever, like your body language or playful little, that's not coming across on Twitter. You just come across like a pure arsehole, mate. From one of the best arseholes of all time. You just don't know you're in the club. You don't even know that you're at war, you know?
Yeah, see, at least Thorin knows he's doing it.
Oh, I'm aware I'm obnoxious. Yeah, I just lean into it, don't I? It's like, fuck it, right, I'll start. Listen, people don't know this. Sadly, ages ago, I'm one of the only people who knows this, sadly. I actually found that in the modern day, my favourite word, cunt, sometimes if enough people report the tweet, it might actually get you banned for like hate speech or something mental. So I don't tend to use it anymore. What a fucking tragedy that would be to my young self if I knew that was where the hill I sold out on. But the sad thing is, like,
Australians in shambles.
people don't realise, like, I would just straight call almost everyone a cunt. Like, I actually just lead into it at this point. And it's not like they hate me anymore, is it? Like, I've sort of tested the limit on that one. I'm like, yeah, no, the Australians have fucked me. Like, they don't know it yet, but they could be in real trouble, you know. Just no one really cares about them, do they?
Every YouTube video in Australia demonetized on YouTube
Instantly.
Let's go to the next question. Have you guys asked any of our GM/org owner connections what they think of an idea of filming teams' journeys through worlds for a championship documentary?
I'm amazed people don't think of it, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't asked anybody.
Right?
But like, I wish Riot would just put a Netflix series together, like Drive to Survive, with all of the teams attending Worlds, and just do the behind-the-scenes footage and all the interviews, and like create a Drive to Survive season based off of Worlds. That'd be amazing.
I'll tell you right now, like, you didn't watch Formula One before that.
Nope.
Because the whole premise of that, it's why actually loads and loads of women got into that show, I noticed, like, as well. It's the whole human element, actually. It's not really about, like, you don't watch the whole race. It's not like you have to be a hardcore Formula. Basically, you watch it and it's like it's like an anime. You get to know who's the rivals and then who's coming up. So actually, if you did it for League of Legends, the genius of it would be, even people who didn't give a fuck about esports might just like put it on, like, oh, it's a new thing, I'll just give this a go. And they might get into like just vibing with like, oh my god, perks. And then, and over here you've got like whoever you fuck, I don't know, Niski or something. Whoever personalities would actually, I think, actually could work, you know, especially the Korean ones, because like there's some amazing storylines there, isn't there?
I mean, I would love that. And like, for instance, with Formula One, now I have a Formula One subscription and I like watch the races on Sundays, but I got into it. I mean, now I just like text Thorin with all the drama because this season of Formula One's been like pretty incredible, actually. And I wouldn't have got into it without Drive to Survive. So there you go. I know a lot of people.
Yeah. I always told people that's the hook that esports doesn't understand. You don't say it's like sports. What you do is you just present the best characters that we have in the game.
Yep.
Like, for example, this is basically actually something I'll give people a piece of info. Way back in the day, it was actually Monty's agent, funnily enough. He had like a connection at some like book publisher, and he was like, do you have any ideas for a book? Because he was thinking I was just going to say the obvious one, like history of esports or something. I was like, mate, I wouldn't fucking read that. And I think it's my shit. I said, here's the book you make. And I thought it was a fire idea. It's called The Heroes and Villains of Esports. And again, I'm going with the human element. So I tell you, for example, like, you don't really, like, if I tell you about Savior as a villain, I don't really tell you all the tactics of battle, etc. What I tell you is this amazing story that this guy was so amazing at controlling everything. He thought he could control fucking players and match fix games and shit and like still get away with it. Like, that's a fucking amazing story. That's a Catch Me If You Can or something. Then I even said for Double Lift you'd have one, because the angle people don't get on Double Lift, I've said this one before, but it's a fire angle, is his name, the Double Lift, is a mechanical, physical magic trick involving making the card go to the top. And then his entire fucking career was defined by trying to mechanically outplay people, including career. Dude, you don't need to know about the game again. That's a fucking sick hook to go into the game. So I think that's the angle you get people on. You bring people in on that particular shit, and who wouldn't fucking love that shit?
What are your thoughts on building a full Korean roster for LCS that abides by the import rules? 3 domestic players can be Koreans who are soon to be residents, like Someday Impact, Huni, Huhi, and Core JJ, while the other remaining slots could be filled with elite Korean players in the LCK/LPL.
So it could be like a 5 Asian team, basically.
Yeah, one possible roster is Impact, Tarzan, Chovy, Tactical, because he's ethnically Korean and maybe fluent in the language.
That's a reach. Okay, that's a reach.
Core JJ, with a fully Korean coaching staff to boot. Would this hypothetical team be a good contender to win Worlds? So here's the problem, guys. The problem with NA is that you can't get good practice in NA. So any player that you put in NA, no matter if they're Chovy or not, are going to be worse by the time that Worlds rolls around, because the server is not as competitive. It doesn't have as many players and solo queue.
You know, the hype about Time Chamber, yeah.
Yeah. So like the problem with NA winning, guys, is not that there aren't skilled players in NA. You would look at some of the NA rosters that are going to Worlds right now and you would say, wow, on paper, this roster looks really fucking good, right? The problem is their practice in NA is so garbage that they can't be good. So, I mean, yes, you could make that team and you could make many other teams and like it would be another good roster on paper, but it doesn't solve the systemic problem. And it's not ping, guys. That ping argument is so fucking stupid, I can't even handle it. Ping is not causing players to be bad. The low server population and lack of competitiveness is causing the server to be bad. Like, that's what's causing the teams to be bad.
By the way, on the specific lineup he made, two obvious things there. One, enjoy the nightmare that would be tactical, because I don't know, does he speak Korean? Like, he might be ethnically Korean. If he doesn't speak it, it's game already for him. You know, and then the other angle is this. Why the fuck are you going to do that to Tarzan and Chovy?
Why are you going to do them like that?
They have to play tactical, you know, just because he's ethnically. I think that's whack as fuck. Fuck that team. I'm not doing that.
I mean, hilariously, that team might actually be better than Chovy's current team.
I assume it probably is. Yeah, probably is.
So maybe it would be an upgrade in some ways for Chovy. What is the team you enjoy watching most right now? Any region? I mean, I really loved watching Mad Lions in the playoffs. I think they were a really fun team to watch. They gave me a lot of hope. Didn't seem like Sheepy shared my hope, having seen some of the other teams. You've been really liking LNG, haven't you?
I just enjoy it for the Tarzan angle. Like, basically, he almost came back to like full strength. He was playing loads of different champions. He was actually a very dominant player, even so. I just always find it cool because the angle people always forget, because now it's taken for granted that an elite Korean should be really good in LPL. In fact, they should, you know, some of them win LPL, some of them do things, win worlds. They always forget this angle, Monty. He's playing in a team with Chinese players. He doesn't fucking speak Chinese. He's only just come. So if you can come over immediately and be the jungler, that essentially means, by the way, you just read your teammates' minds and then just make the correct decision. Like, how much harder do you want it to be? That's God tier. People don't get it. Like, you'd have every excuse to fail. Of course you would. So I think that's amazing that someone can go and do that. And again, look like at times the best jungler in the world on a fucking Chinese. I think that's unbelievable. I think it's actually an underrated accomplishment, you know.
I like this next question. Here's a thought experiment. If you were to ascribe musical genres to the major regions in LoL.
Here we go.
Like classical for LCK, jazz for LEC, rock for LPL, trash pop for LCS, etc. What specific style within that musical genre would you attribute to each team that represents World? So first off, I think
we're going to pick the categories. We're not using the ones he gave.
I think classical for LCK is pretty solid overall.
It's not bad.
I like that. I think jazz for LEC is pretty good. I think rock for LPL is and trash pop for LCS. I don't think LCS is trash pop. It's more like punk. It's more like punk rock, which is like, you know, you only maybe have 3 players in your band. They can't play their instruments very well.
Here's the thing. I've got these two nailed, right? Okay. NA isn't punk. It's fucking what was it called? It's new metal.
No!
Do you know why? Do you know what, Monty? Because what's the region traditionally that it's the most like? LPL is metal, motherfucker. LPL is like, and then NA is just a shit version of that. It's new metal. It's like trying to remix shit and like not fucking it up, racing it.
There's some random rapping.
Like Fred Durst. Yeah, exactly. Like coming fast and then you're the worst. And that's the fucking
like Limp Bizkit and
exactly. Yes.
And it's like edgy but still kind of lame.
Exactly.
Godsmack.
Exactly. There you go.
Okay, so we have to assign bands to these teams. So.
Corn, because people are just working out their fucking issues from childhood the entire time while they're actually an adult in their career, you know.
Well, but which team going to Worlds would be Corn?
I'd say maybe like 100 Thieves. They've got the most sort of edge in their lives. It's sort of like, well, I'm from a minor region and people said I'd never fucking make it, but look at this. And then it's like fucking Abedage, like, I used to be a bit like, you know, awkward, but now I'm coming out my shell, baby. And then fucking some days just like, I'm still around. I'm still here, guys. Like, just a bunch of, you know, lovable losers.
I'm not really getting any Limp Bizkit vibes from Cloud9 or Team Liquid, though.
Let me think who Team Liquid would be, though. Team Liquid would just be like some Because the problem is, in theory, they should probably be skilled, but they should probably be like a bit uninspired.
I think Godsmack really reminds me. I think that's the new metal Team Liquid comparison.
And what was the other team? Cloud9. Who the fuck would Cloud9 be? I don't know for that one. I don't even know. I can't remember that many fucking bands, to be fair. You know, there wasn't that many good new metal bands. Let's be real. There's what for? Oh, maybe they'd be like
Linkin
fucking.
Park.
Yeah, there you go. They'd be Linkin Park because in the end,
like...
whatever they do doesn't even fucking matter.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. And you know, they're just going to be numb, faint. You know, keep naming songs. They're just looking for a place to rest their head after they get fucking smashed in by all the LCK and LPL teams, isn't it?
All right, we're not going to do this for every single. We'll pick. How about this for the other regions? We'll pick one team and one band. So like classical for LC. Is there a classical composer? You know, I get some Beethoven vibes from Damwon.
Not least because he was deaf, and they obviously don't listen to any of the fucking analysis that's been going on for the last 3 years. They just keep doing that shit, don't they? They just keep going. I hope that's good. You know what I mean? Like,
it's technically correct, but I can't hear it.
Exactly. Yeah. Shit. Yeah.
Jazz for LEC. Well, I don't think Rogue is a very jazz team. Their improvisation needs quite a bit of work.
Is a good example, though.
Yeah, I mean, G2 would be the classic example of that. Which
the old G2?
G2 was like the old G2 was like Charlie Parker. You know, very innovative, breaking all the paradigms.
Dead now, sadly, of course.
Dead now as well.
Yeah, dead now. And they did it to themselves.
They did do it to themselves. That's true.
There you go.
Oh, the OD, the G2 OD.
There you go, exactly. Too much G2 in the end.
And you want to do metal for LPL? Is there a metal band that is anybody like Slayer or?
It'd have to be someone like that, wouldn't it? Because the idea is some of their teams, not all obviously, but like the classics, that LPL style is just like constant aggression and just like it's ridiculous, but high skill level. Like people obviously always forget. Like there are some metal because they're playing so fast. Some of them are absurdly skilled. Like how good they are. Like fucking Meshuggah or something. Like you don't actually even have to like the genre. Like they're actually just mega skilled players.
Yeah,
you know? Exactly.
I feel that's a really good one because it's like the virtuosity
like
for some like the virtuosity would be way up there.
Yeah.
I like that question. That was fun. What are your thoughts on the Legends system of automatic invites for CS majors, and how would you like to see that system or one like it added to League? I don't want to see that system in League because like the international events are so far apart that getting an automatic invite would be.
And you change your lineup in League, don't you? So
yeah, exactly.
Like half the team can be different. The main problem is this: that system was brilliant in CS when we had 3 majors a year.
You have because three events a year at least.
It was only a few months between, so odds are if that team was top 8, it's probably pretty good. You know, you at least want to see them at the event. I even think in CSGO, I don't want that. Personally, what I've always wanted is a non-Valve related Dota Pro circuit type thing where you just take the real events and give them points, and it's like basically you get the best teams.
Well, Blast is kind of doing that now.
Yeah, but that's just their circuit, though. ESL and Blast sort of do that, but only with their circuit because they don't. I mean, Blast does sort of acknowledge the other ones, but even then,
they do.
It seems like they put Flashpoint 1 way too high and stuff. You know, like that's why I say it'd have to be almost like an independent body doing it. You know, I'd love that for all games, though.
Yeah, I think you do have to have, because the thing about having the legend slots is if you have 3 majors a year, then you want the storytelling continuity of having the top teams from the last major. So I liked it then because they couldn't get too much worse. And even if they did, it would probably only be 1 or 2 of the Legends teams that were like dramatically worse. And then they would just be kicked out of those spots and fine, it's an upset. And so
it also guaranteed the number 1 team is always there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well, the winner of the last major at least has to qualify. Yeah, exactly.
How is Rally compared to other forms of compensation, like Team Org's websites, Patreon? Well, we haven't taken money out of Rally yet, guys. So, you know, this is the Rally for our questions. We want to do more things with it in the future. Like some stuff we want to do next year is like have viewing parties for major events. You know, Worlds is going to be in NA next year. And like what I would like to do is to set up viewing parties in NA, either in the same city as like a spillover room or like an after party, or in a different city in NA where Worlds isn't being taking place, and actually have viewing parties where we do live shows like this there. in which case we may be able to sell tickets through Grogcoin, right? And so if you have Grogcoin now, we'll price the tickets according to the dollar value, not according to the Grog. So if Grog has already gone up like 3x, 4x from when we started it. So if you have Grog, you will get good value, whether it's like if you want to go to watch parties, or we'll probably do merchandise at some point in time. So these things will be sold in terms of the dollar value. So if you have Grog and it's gone up, you will get better value for that. So the way that we could theoretically make money is that, you guys give us the Grog coin and then we sell that Grog coin, right? So that's the way it works. So right now it's more of a long-term play for us. So if you do want to support us, that kind of stuff will be coming in the future. So in terms of, I guess to answer the question, in terms of immediate money, no, we haven't like cashed out any of it. We're just sitting on it. And
Also,
thank you for supporting us.
But I'll just say this: mind your fucking business. Never you mind how much money there's in there and what we're doing with it. Keep your fucking nose clean. Because one thing I'll say right now,
no. I think people genuinely want to support us, so that's why they're
in terms of like the concept of what it's used for. But yeah, don't you worry about whether we're taking money out of what we're doing there. Because the dumbest thing people have done in the last 2 years is openly say how much fucking cryptocurrency they have. You haven't thought that through, mate. Like, some people are going to get robbed because of that. There's all sorts of shit can happen because that's the sort of thing you keep private unless you need to,
Yeah, and also like if we were to sell a bunch of it, we'd crash the value of our own coin. So like we're not going to do that either.
This clan or OG or secret or whatever,
So yeah, but I think the intent of the question, Thorin, is just for people to ask like, oh, how's the support going? And the answer is fine.
Seems pretty good.
Yeah, for now, and we'll continue to do more stuff and give you guys. The point is that we want to offer more things to do with Grogcoin in the future besides just these questions, and we will. Oh boy, here we go. I want Thorin and Monty to go on a rant about fake/negligent leaks about roster moves. This might be an upcoming Four Horsemen episode.
Could be. Yeah. I'll also say this right now. I'm definitely doing a solo video on this topic because here's the thing: they done fucked up, Monty. They did 2 things wrong. First of all, if you're a leaker, just admit you're a leaker in a TMZ drama hall and say, look, most of it's true, but sometimes I'm not like the most connected person. Sometimes I get it wrong. If you do that, it's fine. But they all have to pretend they're a journalist. They all have to pretend that they are Jacob Wolf and that they have consequences to what they do. And so in doing so, when I called them out, one of the most famous ones did 2 fuck-ups. One, he said I was saying bullshit, so he called me a liar. I've never lied in my professional career in 20 years. Secondly, he insulted me. Well, you know what happens when you insult an investigative journalist and someone with skills in research?
So
they basically give you an endoscopy or whatever the fuck it's called. I'm going to go up your asshole and I'm going to find everything. And my video is going to, if you put it this way, go watch that video about the score esports on my channel. You'll see what's coming. That's the fucking Operation Hellstorm that's coming to your little village, firing those missiles down,
I think you should start this new video series if you're going to keep doing it, and just call it Career Colonoscopy, and then that person's name.
Exactly.
That's a good name.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that'll come out. In separate content.
Exactly.
What is the closest
time to unpack that? It's a big topic.
Yeah. It's huge. What is the closest you have personally come to leaving the industry, and what made you stay?
Ooh. Have you ever had a moment you considered it? Maybe
I mean,
after the renegade shit.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what would I have done realistically? And also, when the Renegade shit was happening, I was already in contract negotiations with Blizzard for Overwatch League. True. So it's like I was already trying to get the fuck out of League because even before that happened, Riot was behaving like they were crazy. So I was tired of dealing with them. And really, like the biggest impediment to my career at that point in time was Riot not paying money. So I was just trying to have a career where I could theoretically live a comfortable middle-class lifestyle. So that's why I was already trying to get out before any of that shit went down. So I don't think that was the point. I mean, I did leave for a number of years, like after my Warcraft 3 RTS days and before I got into League of Legends. Like, I was kind of not doing much in esport between like 2008. I was a fan, I was watching. But between like 2008, 2000 to 2010, I was pretty much just out. And then League got in, and I got interested in it and started making content again. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think I've ever thought about leaving because what the fuck else would I do?
I've never
You know?
actually considered leaving. Like the closest I ever came was just I just one day basically it was around like the beginning of the 2010s, like the first couple of years, was when they were phasing out Quake. That wasn't going to be a thing. That was my favorite game to watch. StarCraft Brood War was going to die and be replaced by StarCraft 2, and I didn't enjoy watching that as much. And then thirdly, CS 1.6 was artificially killed, and then CS:GO, if you played the beta, was shit. So there was a moment in that time where I was like, so if I stay, I'm basically going to have to do StarCraft 2 interviews, and then maybe I'm going to have to pick like League or something, some other game that I've never basically ever been into. So I did think in that moment, like, maybe without actually like enjoying the game, it won't be worth doing. But I have to say, it was actually the opposite thing that happened. When I came to games like StarCraft 2 and League, where I knew nothing about the game, I just applied my research skills. And what I found was it was a really interesting intellectual exercise to see, can I actually come up with questions and make an interesting interview when it's not a game I've watched for years? It's not a game I'm an expert about at all. Essentially, I have to purely get the info out of this guy. I have to figure out how to draw stuff out of him. So I think it actually leveled my interviewing up a lot. I've never really considered leaving esports. Like I'm sort of a lifer. I was there from not the absolute beginning, but close to the beginning. You know,
Yeah, and
I think that ever made me feel like leaving esports, and it's only a momentary feeling. You know, when everyone else goes, without you fans, I'd never be able to make it. The fans are the one thing that'll consistently make you just for a second go, why the fuck am I in this industry? You know what I mean?
True.
Especially like the modern day ones where like, there's not even anything in the comment. It's just ratio, L, you are old. Like there's nothing there. I may as well literally just have like bots spamming me at that point in time. Like what is that? And you just think, even though again, it's in the moment, it's an emotional reaction, you just think, is this who I'm wasting time doing a 2-hour interview for? Like people who say ratio, you know what I mean? And even then, I never really considered leaving. What I did consider, like 2 years ago, before some of the things with Flashpoint and some of the ideas me and Monty had, is I did consider half to spite the industry and half just to actually celebrate my real fans. I did consider doing a method that I won't go into now, where I would basically paywall a bunch of my content. I thought that was the move, because then it's like, listen, then none of the dickheads who want to talk shit, but then watch the video. No. You won't be watching the video. You won't be watching the video. The guy who pays, he'll be watching the video. He deserves the video at that point in time. But I never did it, you know. It was it was a fantasy idea.
I think like had the league stuff not taken off for me, or like I had not gone out to Korea, then I probably would be doing something else right now. But who knows? I mean, I just have always been, you know, ever since I got back into esports after a couple year break, I think it's always been a good time. And at this point in time, the thing about Thorin and my kind of position in the industry is like people are just fucking lining up to throw money at us. Like, you know, if we want to make a company, it would be extremely easy to get investors for it. Like, you know, Flashpoint was a project that was built with me and Thorin, like advising and being a key part of it. And I'm still a part of it. And like, so there's a lot of trust in us from the people who have money in the industry. Yeah. So it would actually.
Example. I've always thought the dumbest thing those journalists who tried to attack me do is, one, you have no bullets in the gun, dickhead. Unsurprisingly, everyone knows the things I've done. I've survived them because I basically put out 2,000 fucking videos since then. So the value add is mental. So people are like, 2 jokes versus 2,000. Mate, I'll win that one. So you can't expose me. And then secondly, let's say you did. Let's say I couldn't be like a public on-face cat. Do you know how many? I'm not joking. I could go tomorrow and be the general manager of some of the biggest orgs in the world. I'm not joking, because here's the one thing you guys don't know. Sometimes talk shows, the most loyal viewers are actually the fucking boomer guys who've worked in the industry, because they want to know like what the takes are and what's going on, and especially like by the numbers, people watch it. So what's mad is I've had some of those guys legit tell me I would actually take you for that role, because basically they like my philosophy on like, you know, how you make a team, and then when you cut a guy, and then do you bring in the young guy, or do you gamble on the veteran? Like some of them actually said like, I just kind of fuck with your worldview on it, you know.
And it's also that we have content that is actually like other people are incapable of making it. Like the 4 Horsemen is the most important industry esports show right now, right? And tons of people who work in the industry and who are key players in the industry watch and love that show. And they don't say it publicly, guys, but I get a lot of messages from people saying like, really love this episode. It's really important you guys are doing this. And so no one else can make that show except for me, Thorin, and Richard Lewis. It is actually impossible for anyone else to do that show. So, you know, we occupy some pretty, like, we have a few castles, like, at the like along the rivers of esports, or like at the intersections of esports, and it is actually impossible to dislodge us. So
we're like World of Frey or something, you know. We've just got that access denied.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think we're in a pretty good space right now, and it's like you know, I have to turn down work like all the time because there's just so much shit like that I can't do because I just don't have enough time in my life. So that's, you know, I'm not particularly concerned. All right, let's go for the last question. I loved using your example of formats determining what factors are the most important for success in so much more than esports. Do you have any other axioms that you developed that have stayed true over the years in your fields of interest? So like to explain the question, formats, like you have to, if a format is a test, right, is what he's talking about. And we talk about this, which is a format is only telling you what you want from those teams. So for example, a league round robin format is telling you you're testing for who is the best team on average against the field, whereas a tournament format is telling where you have a different match every week, like a best of 5, is telling you who is best at preparing for a best of 5 against a specific opponent, which is why I don't like formats that are round robins into brackets, because you're testing for 2 different things, and that makes me annoyed. So I think that's what he's talking about, which is that you have to consider formats as more of a test, and you're going to get whatever, you know, for the most part, you're going to get the answer, which is the winner of that format, you know, who is the best that you're actually testing for.
Point is, right? If Worlds had a different format, there probably would be a different winner. Yep. You know, it's not that it's really the best team wins every time. It's the best team in that format. Yeah, exactly. I would say this. I've kind of got an axiom, and basically, I know this sounds mad, but one thing I've always been fascinated by, and the kind of writers I've always enjoyed, are people who are syncretists. They bring together different areas, and they sort of look at where it overlaps, and essentially they boil it down to the essentials, the archetypal elements, what would you say, the fucking... Yeah, essentially you get the point, right? You sort of figure out what the essential concepts are and what like meta concepts exist, even though it's different fields. Could be classical music, could be like philosophy, could be language, and you bring them together. So basically in esports, one thing I've found that basically is a concept that seems to apply to all esports games is, even if the eye test of the esports game, CSGO, or in games like League of Legends, you still like, there's a lot of like skill on the champions and stuff, even though your eye test always tells you, stack as much skill as you can, get all the superstars. I actually think it's the opposite way around. I actually think the great teams, the greatest teams usually, actually rarely have even more than 2 superstar type players. What you actually need, my axiom is this, because it's a team game, and team play, how you work together and off each other, makes you more than the sum of your parts, and collectively you can cover each other's weaknesses. The actual principle is this. In a great team, you want just enough skill that you can still have the team play and the tactics. Basically, skill is actually probably the most overrated quality in these games, in my opinion. Because if you just go look at the greatest teams in almost every great game, like I say, if you took the top 10 players, they're never going to have more than 2. You know what I mean? They're not going to have 5. Like, they're not going to be... I think that's the area where there's always a push, funnily enough, because that's the other problem. This is what Carlos found with Rekkles. The temptation's always there. If someone tells me, and can I upgrade a position? Of course, you always think it. Of course you do. But the great teams, like I say, you just need just enough skill. That's that you don't need to max that out. You need to max the other ones out. If you can max out tactics, team play, just enough skill, just enough to make it work, basically, that I can execute it. There you go.
I think for me, one axiom that I have developed, which is true, is that first off, just in life, the most important thing is learning how to learn. If you have that meta skill, if you have a technique for how to approach new topics, that is 100% in your life the most important skill that you can have, because it'll allow you to achieve mastery faster. And usually, obviously, how people learn is different. So the best way to learn how you learn is to devote yourself to one subject and be a master at that subject, because it will take longer the first time, but when you actually devote yourself to that, you'll realize through trial and error what are the most effective ways to retain information and to analyze the way that you are internalizing that information. And once you know that, mastering other things becomes much, much easier. over.
I've got a story for you. A Bible
right.
story. So we're going to end with the Bible, kids, and then we're going to sing hymns, and that's going to be the end of the show. Are you ready? So in the Bible, obviously, the man that is called the wisest man who ever lived is called King Solomon, right? He was the son of King David, and basically he built the temple and all that jazz. Right? But here's the angle. This is the story that people don't know. Essentially, right, God, in a dream, asked him, like, what would you want from me? And obviously, that's like that classic thing where you're all going to go like a genie, like, oh, a million wishes, you know, when everyone goes with that whack angle, right? And what happened was essentially, because remember, this is also supposed to be like, you know, a teaching lesson, and maybe there's a mythological element to it. Instead of saying what everyone else would say, like, let me conquer the world, let me have the most beautiful women, let me have the most riches, because Solomon was wise, he basically said, make me wise. He asked for wisdom. So it's what you're saying, Monty. And by asking for wisdom, he got all the other things. Because guess what? You can get all the women if you're the wisest guy. You can get all the money if you're the shrewdest at business. You can do everything you want, can't you? He did become a degenerate after that and sort of fuck up, and even God sort of bailed on him. But listen, no spoilers. Enjoy it on your own time.
So he had the power but misused it.
Exactly. Oh, was that the human condition, isn't it?
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. The next show will be after play-ins. So what we're going to do, so Worlds format this year is kind of fucked because it's so compressed compared to normal Worlds. I believe there is literally a 1-day break between play-ins and the main event, which is insane. So play-ins end on the 9th, and the start date of group is on the 11th. So here's what we're going to do, Thorin. On the 10th, we will have one of our mega preview shows with like the half-hour guests, and we'll jam as many people in on the 10th as possible. And unfortunately, usually there'd be like a week, but there's only 1 day. So we're going to jam it all in that 1 day. And then in between the first and second round robins of groups, there's another 1 day where we will have a show. And then after groups, we will have another show. So there will be like a lot of shows in 1 week or 8 days or something like that. But yeah, that's just how Worlds is going to be. There's no time at all to do anything, apparently. I think it's probably because they moved it from China to Iceland that all of this happened. Because it probably pushed back the start date of Worlds, which meant they had to jam it into a shorter time period.
And so there will be quarantine and stuff. It makes sense.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of content, guys. We will put it all out there. So when those 1 days occur, we will quickly come in and do all the content. And so we will see you on the 10th of October for the next show. It'll be on the same obvious Twitch channel, Inside on Esports, and the Inside on Esports YouTube. So we'll see you then for the preview.